Yes. Ms. Perone Lambros,
Here.
Ms. Niedergang,
Here.
Mr. Cohen,
Here.
Ms. Fraga,
Here.
Ms. Sachs,
Here.
Mr. Newland,
Here.
Mayor Frida.
Mayor Frida will be joining us soon. He's having some technical issues, but we're hopeful he will be joining us very, 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 very soon. So next on the agenda, we have approval of minutes. We have a set of, looks like five minutes, 5 months of minutes, or not, sorry, 5 sets of minutes. If no one has any changes, or does anyone want to move to approve the minutes? Eve, is there a second?
Second.
Leighton seconds. Okay. And do we need, for this, do we need to do an all in favor?
Yes, all in favor.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. So approval of minutes moves forward. Next, we have public comments for items not on the agenda. And anyone wishing to comment on items that are not on the agenda, please raise your hand and you will be acknowledged. Adam, do we have anyone?
There are no hands raised.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Was that another technical issue? Are we still recording?
We're still recording. I'm not sure. I think someone's microphone was feedback.
Okay. Thank you. So I think since we're still waiting for the mayor to join us, rather than going into the police report, if we can then go onto municipal and staff reports. Any of my colleagues have any announcements to make or reports? Michelle? And then David.
You want to go ahead? You had your hand up first.
I'm happy either way.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Roland.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to give a report to council on the progress the Vision Zero Task Force has been making. The Vision Zero Task Force has been working on reviewing action plans from other communities. It's been gathering data on crashes and areas of community concern in Princeton. It's been formulating recommended actions for Princeton and exploring the process used by other communities to develop and implement their action plans. While we began the process with the intention to proceed with only staff and local volunteer efforts, we've learned that virtually every community which has undertaken this task has sought expert outside consultant support. For example, Hoboken, recently cited by Pete Buttigieg as an exemplar, had 3 consultants assist with developing their Vision Zero action plan, including experts on road safety and community engagement. The task force has a good deal of expertise, both in the form of recommendations from previous consultants, input from Greater Mercer TMA, input from staff, and experienced members of the community, helping to shape the policy and roadway improvements recommendations. However, to complete the community engagement piece of the process, we need assistance beyond the capacity and capabilities of those on the task force. There are 3 main aspects to this process. 1, education and awareness building to familiarize the public with the Vision Zero project and the safe systems approach. Number 2, interactive stakeholder engagement during preparation of the action plan. And number 3, communications of the conclusions reached, including any education needed to aid public understanding of new policies coming out of the process. In an effort to responsibly manage costs and coordinate efforts across municipal initiatives, leadership from the task force met recently with leadership from the planning board to discuss integrating Vision Zero planning with the upcoming master plan overhaul. It was agreed that the master plan consultant should be able to wrap stakeholder input on the updates to the circulation element with stakeholder input on the recommendations of the Vision Zero Task Force. But both the education process preceding that community engagement process and the education process upon completion would be beyond the scope of the master plan process. At this point, it'd be premature to engage a consultant to help with the post-planning communications effort, since we don't know in detail what the shape of the action plan will be. The task force would, however, like to ask council to support engaging a professional to assist with the education and outreach leading up to the public engagement process. I understand that members of council may want more information than what I've just outlined in this report. And I don't in any way want to rush this decision, but I would like to, put on the agenda for a future meeting to give a little more detailed report on what the action plan task force has been working on. And I encourage other members of council to reach out to me to let me know specifically what information would be helpful to you in making a decision whether to support engaging consultants assistance with that pre-education process. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and welcome back, Mayor. We are at council announcements and reports, and Michelle, what's next?
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you. So I know it snowed today, so it's hard to think about, but it's right around the corner and the rec department's really busy with some really great programming. So first of all, they're looking for applicants for seasonal maintenance, lifeguards, and pool customer service. So if you're interested in a summer job, that program is there. And then there's going to be an early bird special rates up until April 17th to buy your pool membership options, your community park pool membership, and then there's aquatic programs as well for swimming lessons, and also deep water exercise classes for adults. So there's a lot going on at the rec department, and you can check that out at princetonrecreation.com. So I wanted to make that service announcement. And then I just have
Excuse me, Michelle, before you go on, can I just mention,
Yeah.
because it came up, a question at one of my previous meetings, just to let families know that if they need assistance, there are scholarships available, not for all the rec department programming and also for pool memberships.
Thank you so much for reminding us of that very important program. There was a question that came up at one of our meetings of whether or not there was a limited amount of support, and you do have to apply, but there's no limit to being able to help those economically disadvantaged residents in our community for those programs. So thank you for bringing that up. The next thing I just wanted to mention was just an update for the Community Center Feasibility Task Force. We should be wrapping up our recommendations and bringing that forward to council, hopefully within a month or so. We've done some outreach to look at other community centers. So we have some ideas, and it's just a really great visioning process to look at what our needs are, what's being met in town, what's falling short, and what the vision is for something going forward. So it's a really exciting process, and so I'm looking forward to coming with the task force sometime in the next month or two. That's it. Thanks.
okay. Thank you, Michelle. Leticia?
Yes, thank you. I have a brief announcement on behalf of the Human Services Department. They have now opened up the process for and accepting applications for the Summer Youth Employment Program for the 2002 summer program. And this is for youth who are ages 14 to 18. And the application deadline is April 29th. And links to the application is available on the Human Services Department webpage.
Thank you.
That's it.
Other council members? Any reports or announcements? Okay, let me just apologize. I had technical difficulties and I had to reboot my computer, and it's very slow coming back to life. Before we do other announcements and reports, and Leticia, thanks for waiting until I was able to join and not do this yet. But over the weekend, a member of the staff here at the town died unexpectedly, and it's appropriate for us to have a moment of silence in memory of Deb Mercantani. Deb was a longtime employee. In fact, she was going to retire later this year. But anyway, if we could just have a moment of silence to honor her for her. Anyway, to honor her. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for allowing us to do that. Now, if I could get to some staff announcements. Jim, did you want to update us on PSE&G?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you, council members. As you are aware, we have had several weeks of utility work that has been done in preparation of our Witherspoon Street improvements project for the first phase. A lot of that work has been done at night, and we recognize that it's been quite a quite a difficult time, to say at the least, for some of our residents. We do see some light at the end of the tunnel. PSE&G is installing a new gas main in Witherspoon Street starting this evening. We discussed with them the potential for them to go to a 12-hour shift and only work 4 nights a week, and that is what they will be doing. Tonight they will, because they'd already made arrangements for police for traffic control, they will be working from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. But starting tomorrow night, they will start work at 6:30 p.m. and finish at 6 a.m. and they will not be working on Friday nights. They anticipate the work to take between 2 and 3 weeks. Hopefully with 12-hour shifts, it'll be much closer to 2 weeks than 3 weeks. Much of the heavy work, the noisiest work, is done early in the shift. So with any luck, the work being done while people are sleeping will be of less magnitude than the work between 6:30 and 10 or 11 o'clock. Hopefully everybody survives this. It's been a tough haul for the last 4 weeks, and we really do sympathize with the public. But the gas main has to be shut off in order for them to be working on it and in the vicinity of the regulator that they have. And they have to dig by hand. So it has been taking quite a long time for all of the utility work to be done. But hopefully in a couple of weeks, the nighttime work will end, and Witherspoon Street improvements project, which is to be done during the day, will begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I also have something that's, well, I'll be doing the announcement, but it is staff related. So I know that there's been a lot or a fair amount of reaction to the pear trees that we took down on Witherspoon Street. But I would like to say this. That was a decision that was made after a lot of discussion. I understand the timing and the trees did not get to bloom. But we had a very unfortunate circumstance where a member of the public told our arborist, they used the F-bomb and another word that I cannot repeat to describe what they thought of him. So if that member of the public happens to hear this broadcast in any way, shape, or form, you owe an apology to our arborist. He did not unilaterally make that decision. Let me read a statement from our Shade Tree Commission, and any member of the public is more than welcome to contact me at any time to ask further questions on this. The Princeton Shade Tree Commission supports the replacement of the existing Bradford Pear Alley with diverse shade trees as part of the Witherspoon Street redesign and reconstruction. Urban streets are typically inhospitable environments for trees. In recent decades, urban foresters and engineers have developed cost-effective construction techniques that provide protection from foil compaction in root zones and ensure adequate supply of sufficient moisture to support street tree growth. The reconstruction of Witherspoon Street is perhaps a once in a generation opportunity to rebuild the tree planting locations along Witherspoon Street. The digging and soil disturbance that will be necessary to rebuild the sewer lines and other infrastructure that is buried under Witherspoon Street will inevitably harm the root systems of the existing trees. The impact to their roots will be detrimental to their survival. The street reconstruction process will, however, make possible the creation of enhanced planting sites that will promote healthy growth and longer lives for the replacement trees. The renewed plantings will enhance the Witherspoon Street environment, making it more inviting for shopping and dining, and will enrich the neighborhood's biodiversity. The timing is good. Bradford pear trees are not a long-lived species. The well-known horticulturist Michael Durr explains that this tree suffers from a fatal genetic flaw that causes it to self-destruct after 10 to 15 years. And to plant entire streets with this tree is playing biological Russian roulette. Most of Witherspoon Street's pear trees are approaching or have exceeded their life expectancy. Even without this project, they would soon need to be replaced. Concern about proliferation about the growth of this tree Concern about this tree has caused it to now be considered an invasive species. National Park Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, in their publication, Plant Invaders of Mid-Atlantic Natural Areas, identify this tree as being an invasive species that threatens natural areas in this region. The New Jersey Invasive Species Strike Team has placed this tree on its do not plant list. Realizing that monocultures promote the ready spread of disease and infestation, the Shade Tree Commission supports replanting with a diversity of shade tree species. Their selection should depend on the characteristics of the individual planting sites once finalized. Thoughtful selection should result in healthier trees with a greater probability of longevity. Some preference could be given to species known to support the presence of birds and butterflies, and consideration could be given to sprinkling in flowering trees such as cherries and silver bells that would blossom in the spring. For many reasons, now is a good time to reconsider the trees that line Witherspoon Street. The Princeton Shade Tree Commission believes that the Witherspoon Street redesign and reconstruction project affords Princeton a great opportunity to do just that. Again, I would just say to everyone, we're not all going to agree and we can disagree with each other, but we should all be respectful and nice to each other. There's no reason to treat people the way our arborist was treated. So having said that, thank you very much for listening to me. Do we have other staff reports other than the police report, which I'll get to, but just any other staff reports before that? Deanna.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I did want to announce on Thursday night, we will be having a virtual meeting, pre-construction meeting to our Witherspoon Phase 1 project, where property owners and business people in the area can meet our contractor, learn more about the construction schedule and how the work is being scheduled to keep pedestrian and vehicular ways open during construction. That's at 7 p.m. on Thursday night, and it is on the municipal calendar. People can register and get the link for the meeting there. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. Any other staff reports before we go to the police report? All right, seeing none. Captain.
Mayor, good evening. Members of council, good evening. Tonight I have for you the February monthly police report. And as always, the report will be posted to the website and all of its data for everyone's review. After reviewing the report, I'd like to highlight one specific area in the report that would be listed in the February offenses section, and specifically regarding the criminal mischief offense that was listed. Year to date, we've had 13 criminal mischief incidents that have taken place, most of which have been graffiti in the central business district area. Between October 2021 and March of this year, we've had 15 graffiti incidents that took place mostly in and around the area of the Garden Theater. And pleased to report that in the last week or so, our Detective Bureau did an outstanding job and solved all of those graffiti-related incidents.
Good.
So I can forecast in the monthly reports to come that number will likely stay in and around these same areas. It's certainly not going to go up. I think we were able to close out through some solid investigation those graffiti incidents. So to the members of the Detective Bureau that might be listening or on this meeting, congratulations, that's an outstanding job. So hats off to the men and women in the Detective Bureau. Happy to answer any other questions anyone might have about the report. But after I reviewed it, that was one area that certainly stuck out to me.
Thank you, John. Leticia?
Yes, thank you for that report, Captain. I just have a question that we may have addressed it before, but I just noticed that again, there's an increase on emotionally disturbed person incidents. And it just happens to be 21 and this year. And wonder if it's as we know that many in our community, including in our schools, have experiencing more mental health, whether it's anxiety or other issues. And I was wondering whether there's any sense of whether it may be related to that.
Yeah, so we continue to train. We certainly recognize the numbers and we pay close attention to them month to month. And we certainly do our best to prepare for the unknown. But I agree. I think they can be related to what you mentioned. And we continue to use the training facility that is state of the art, virtual reality, de-escalation is what we highlight. And we're doing our best to prepare ourselves, day in and day out for those encounters.
Yeah, and on that note, I want to commend you and the whole entire department. There are incidents that may not be reported on the blotter that we know that you're handling in a way that where any other situation might have turned, might have been something that would have been tragic at times, but because of the training that you conduct and that our officers receive, the outcome is just, again, it's not something we're going to be reading about in the blotter, but I just want to commend the department by how they're handling certain situations.
I can't thank you enough for those kind words. And as you know, and members of the Public Safety Committee know, certain things, like you said, aren't discussed. But we've had a few very serious incidents recently that our men and women were just spectacular and did a great job. And we continue to recognize the stressors in the community and elsewhere. And we just do our best day in and day out to prepare our men and women for those incidents. But thank you. Your words are appreciated.
No, and please relay our gratitude to our
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia.
Thank you, Leticia. Eve?
Leticia beat me to it. I also wanted to, really extend my congratulations, on a situation that could very easily have led to injury or loss of life, and through nothing other than patience and really good training. The Princeton Police Department was able to de-escalate and end without any violent result. And hopefully the person in question is having their mental health needs met. So just again, also extending my congratulations. On a lighter note, I just want to say I always really appreciate the pictures and descriptions of what the Safe Neighborhood Bureau is doing, especially they were at Riverside this past month where my kids went to school. And it was just lovely to see the photo of the officers there with the kids. And, they brought the K9 and everything. And so just want people to know that, our officers are out in the community and are available to be there for programs and to, whether to answer your questions about how things work and to bring the dog along should the moment be right for that. So just thanks for always including that. I mean, it's not, I know that may not be the most dangerous thing that you do, but it really shows your commitment to being part of our community, and it's very much appreciated.
Yeah, again, thank you for your kind words. And Officer Naves and Officer Carter and the leadership of Sergeant Thomas is amazing. They make us look great, and they do go unnoticed sometimes. So if they're listening, we appreciate you. Thank you for all you do, and certainly, again, thank you for your kind words.
We have any other questions for the captain? Okay. John, thanks for being here. Thanks to everybody on the department. Have a great evening.
My pleasure, Mayor. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks, Captain.
Thank you, sir.
Leticia, I'm sorry, again, sorry that I got on late. Did we do the public comments for items not on the agenda?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And there were none.
Okay. I think, so I've noticed there's been a hand up for a while, so I'm sorry if you to just take the liberty, and I think the comment is for something up, it went away. Okay, never mind. Moving on.
There's,
It's back
there's
up.
a hand up.
Okay. All right, Joe Butler has her hand up. I believe she had something for items not on the agenda, public comment for items not on the agenda. So Adam, could you just bring her in?
Yes, Mayor, bringing her over.
I apologize for being late to the meeting. I never thought you'd get through the minutes that quickly. So I misjudged, took me a minute to get on. So thank you for making an exception. Today, a group of neighbors and I sent a letter to Mayor and Council requesting that the area in need of redevelopment designation for the Princeton Theological Seminary properties be rescinded. I would like to submit the letter for the public record, but I would exceed my time if I were to read it out loud. In short, it has been 4 years since the governing body took the first official steps to designate these 10 non-contiguous properties owned by the seminary as an ANR. Currently, there is no redevelopment plan either proposed or under public consideration. 4 years is a long time to live with such uncertainty. We all entered this process in good faith, hoping for a win on all sides, the town, PTS, and the neighbors. We discussed traffic and stormwater mitigation, improved lighting and pathways as the seminary connected their campus, and even preservation of open space. However, the strategic priorities of PTS changed, and now we understand that sometime in 2020, they had a contract purchaser, a private developer, for a portion of the properties. Repeated efforts to reach out to the developer have been rebuffed, so you can understand our concern as to whether the hoped-for improvements remain under consideration. Certainly, selling off a portion of the area in need of redevelopment represents a stark departure from the spirit in which we began this process. There have been significant changes in personnel on all sides. President Barnes will step down next year. Our primary contact, Shane Berg, has left PTS. Former Planning Board Chair Wanda Gunning has retired, as has the chair of the ANR task force, of this particular ANR task force, Gail Ullman. On the municipality side, there's been turnover at mayor and council and 4 council positions: Sachs, Perrone, Lambros, Newland, and Niedergang. It is the neighbors who have remained constant, and we are requesting that the ANR be rescinded. This designation always reflected PTS institutional priorities, not the public purpose as required by law. If and when there's an interest in redevelopment of any or all of the PTS properties after the ANR is rescinded, we'd be willing to begin anew with the current mayor and council, the current planning board, and the current leaders of PTS. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
And maybe one of you could even forward that letter to the public record so all the signatures are included.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, back to the regular agenda here. Michelle, you have a proclamation.
I do. Thank you. And I'll go ahead I would have shared reading this, but just for time's sake, I'll just go ahead and read it. And then Mayor, if you can finish it off after the whereas. So this is a proclamation of the Mayor of Princeton, whereas Princeton and its residents recognize the power of the arts and arts experiences in improving the well-being of our entire community. And whereas April 2022 marks the 55th anniversary of the founding of the Arts Council of Princeton. And whereas April 2022 will be the first inaugural April Arts event in Princeton, a month-long series of arts engagement, public art, and performance throughout our central business district and on campus of Princeton University. And whereas April Arts will feature the first ever Princeton Piano Project and culminating in the inaugural Princeton Porch Fest, and is the embodiment of the Arts Council of Princeton's mission of building community through the arts. And whereas April Arts activities are designed to include our town's diverse and vibrant arts and cultural organizations coming together in solidarity and creativity. And whereas the arts community in general and the Arts Council of Princeton specifically has helped make Princeton a site of creative placemaking. And whereas the Arts Council of Princeton has been a positive force in the greater Princeton region throughout COVID-19, mobilizing to provide free fabric face masks to community members, producing public art, and prioritizing the importance of creative engagement for a healthy society. And whereas the Arts Council outreach programs continue to engage members from high-risk populations, including children from low-income families, infirm seniors, and homeless youth, providing the healing benefits of art for all, regardless of means. And
now therefore it be resolved, the Mayor and Council of Princeton salutes the Arts Council of Princeton and the entire arts community on this occasion. And so we do hereby proclaim the month of April as Arts Month in Princeton, New Jersey, and we call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens, given under my hand and seal this 28th day of March 2022, Mark Frieda, Mayor. So on behalf of Mayor and Council, congratulations and thank you to the Arts Council and to everybody that's involved in the arts in this community. I mean, it's amazing all that happens in this community. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Leighton, I believe you're up next with a award of recognition.
Thank you, Mayor. For my
Excuse me,
recognition.
may I suggest that we bring in Dr. Hodges in?
Thank you, Leticia.
Thank you.
Adam, can you bring in Cecilia Hodges?
Thank you,
Yes, Mayor.
Thank
Would you like
Madam
me to
President.
apologize? Should I bring them over as a panelist or just to talk?
Well, I'll bring her as a panelist so we can see her because I doubt that she's going to hang out for the rest of the meeting.
All right, no problem.
Okay,
Here I am.
there you are. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Ms. Hodges.
Good evening.
Hello. Dr. Cecilia B. Hodges was born, reared, and educated in New York City, specifically Harlem and Washington Heights. Her education experience is extensive. Hunter College High School for Girls, bachelor's degree from Talladega College, master's degree in history of drama from Columbia University, PhD in oral interpretation of literature from Northwestern University. As an educator, Cecilia was a tenured associate professor in speech and drama arts. As if this was not enough education, Cecilia ventured to England to study at the University of Birmingham, where she received an England certificate in the studies of Shakespeare. She also received a Ligon certificate in theater from the University of Ghana. She was the founder and director of the African Afro-American Studies program at Douglas Rutgers University. When Cecilia felt that her programs at Douglas were established, she joined the English department at Princeton University. While a professor at Princeton, she introduced and taught courses in oral interpretation of literature and readings on 5 Black writers. As a performer, Cecilia has done it all. She performed dramatic presentations locally and abroad at schools, colleges, churches, and organizations. Among her many performances, she appeared in Oprah Winfrey's film, Beloved, as well as with the Theater Guild of New Jersey's performance of A Tea with Zora and Marjorie, and at the Bridge Theater in Burlington, New Jersey for A Lesson Before Dying. She is the founder and director of the Witherspoon People's Verse Speaking Choir at Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church. She has been the director of the Verse Speaking Choir for 36 years. Through those 36 years, there have been scores of people who have had the privilege to perform with the choir. The Verse Speaking Choir gives religious and secular selections during the worship services at Witherspoon, and the choir has, through the years, performed at colleges and universities, neighboring churches, organizations, public libraries, benefits, a BET TV performance, even a performance at a mall. The most acclaimed performance was in 1990 when a cast of many performed James Weldon Johnson's God's Trombones for Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church's 150th anniversary. Not only has she presented monologues with the acting company on stage, a senior acting group of McCarter Theater, she also has presented her one-woman readings at the Princeton Public Library's Readings Over Coffee. That included an annual portrayal of the life and times of Paul Leroy Robeson. Her performances have been extensive, including a stellar presentation celebrating the wisdom, writings, and poetry of Maya Angelou. Cecilia has been in the forefront of many civil and equal rights movements. She vividly remembers her walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge during the march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. Many of her social concerns are heard in her one-woman shows and in the performances that she directs with the Verse Speaking Choir. Dr. Cecilia B. Hodges has served the town of Princeton for many years as a professor, leader, performer, and faithful steward of her church. Her legacy will continue as a valiant woman who gives of her time, her talents, and her knowledge. With a nod to Ms. Shirley Satterfield for helping put this acknowledgement together. I thank you for all you've done, Ms. Hodges. We, the people in Princeton, love you, and we are very happy that you're a part of our family. Thank you.
Thank you. May I say a word?
Yes, you may, please.
Thank you. I couldn't let it go by without thanking you very much, Councilman Layton, for that meticulous introduction. I had no idea you would be covering all of that, but I feel three things. I feel humble, I feel grateful, and I feel hopeful. I'm humble because I stand on the shoulders of those outstanding people who have preceded me in this position of recognition by the council, and that's an honor. And I am grateful to you, Councilman Layton, for, as I said, bringing my name forward and for being so careful and kind in your introduction. And of course, I am grateful to our resident historian, Shirley Satterfield, for having preceded me also in one of those groups, but also for helping to bring this evening to my attention. And finally, I'm hopeful that we in this community will continue on the path that we're on, and that is searching for and moving toward equity and fine housing and fine education and thoughtful voting and comfort and peace and comity in our Princeton community. Thank you all very, very much. And I'm sorry to say I must leave the meeting because I had another scheduled at 7, but my gratitude is unbounded. Thank you. very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges.
Have a good evening.
All right.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Princeton Senior Resource Center. Drew, you're up next.
Mark, can I just say a couple of introductory words real quick?
Of course.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm the liaison to the Senior Center, and I'd like to welcome a couple of people who I've worked with over the last couple of years, the PSRC Executive Director, Drew Dyson, and the Chair of the Board, Joan Gerges, and just want to say what a tremendous service they have provided for the people of Princeton over the last 2 years. Really just incredible the way they have moved from being, as many of us did, from being all in person to being virtual, and to make sure that seniors, among others, were not left out of things. And I know they're going to talk about a bunch of the programs that I've done, but I just wanted to share my personal respect and admiration. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Eve. Drew.
Yes, thank you very much, Eve, for that. Special thanks to you as our council liaison, and thank you, Mayor Frida, and members of council, as well as municipal staff and colleagues and members of the community. As we get started this evening, it's my pleasure to have with me this evening Joan Gerges, both a Princeton resident and president of our Board of Trustees, and invite Joan to welcome you all as well.
Thank you, Drew. I'm very happy to be here. Hello to all of you. We have enjoyed having a liaison from the council, and so thanks both to David Cohn, who was our first liaison, and to Eve Niedergang, who is our current liaison. It's made a huge difference to have meetings with them regularly. The Princeton Senior Resource Center was actually founded in 1974. So we've had a 48-year relationship with the municipality of Princeton. We've been providing engaging programs, life-giving human connections, dynamic lifelong learning opportunities, and compassionate social services. As the president of the PSRC board and a Princeton resident since 1977, I want to share my gratitude for this community and the ongoing support provided for older adults in our community. Princeton is one of the first age-friendly communities in the United States. We've been recognized by AARP and the World Health Organization as such. Princeton is a thriving retirement destination, and we believe this is due in part to the public-private partnership that we have together. On behalf of PSRC, and on behalf of the community of older adults in Princeton, we thank the council for your continued support for the partnership. It has made a huge difference in our lives, in the lives of older adults in the community, and in the community more generally.
Thank you, Joan. And as we look back over the past year, one of the most significant things that PSRC has undertaken has been our Vaccine Navigator program and our partnership with the Princeton Health Department. I'm especially grateful for Jeff Grosser and for the work of his team and just the partnership that we've had together. And we created a video last summer that I haven't had an opportunity to share with this group. And I wanted to just begin our time together sharing this short video because I believe it captures the work that the Vaccine Navigator program has brought to our community. We know that it's been an incredibly difficult year for so many people in the midst of this pandemic. And in early December, we saw hope begin to arrive in the form of a vaccine and then a second vaccine. In January, as our first responders and others were vaccinated and we were beginning to move on to older adults in our community,
we began to hear over and over again frustration from people about how to navigate the vaccine system. They were trying everything they could to get on every list they could, but so many people didn't have the resources to do so. So we began to talk as a staff, what can we do about this as the Princeton Senior Resource Center? We immediately connected with some of our grantors and talked about the possibility of launching what we called the Vaccine Navigator program.
So the Vaccine Navigator program is a group of volunteers came together to help seniors get vaccine appointments. After they signed up with Vaccine Navigator, I would match them with a volunteer. The volunteer would reach out and call them and would help them you take that information and search different websites, CVS, Walmart, hospital websites, mega sites, to try to find them a vaccine appointment.
2 of the residents, English is not their first language, so we needed a Korean speaking and a Spanish speaking volunteer. And within a week, Carla had connected those residents to their volunteer navigator, and they had local appointments scheduled for their vaccine, and they were so appreciative, and so was I.
Well, after trying to get on the New Jersey vaccine website for many, many weeks, and also on the CVS website, and hearing next to nothing, finally a nice person at Windrose told us about the Princeton Senior Resource Center. And I called up, and within 2 days we were lined up at Princeton Medical Center, I think it's an education building, and we got a first shot. So we're very happy and very grateful and very pleased.
And I know the Vanden Blinks, they sent such a nice email talking about how they could now get together with their loved ones and see their daughters. And honestly, it brought a tear to my eye. It's just so nice to know that some positive connections came out of such a terrible year. I'm hoping to participate in some other areas again with seniors, because I think I've kind of found my mission, and I'm grateful for the Senior Center for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you, Princeton Resource Senior Center, for giving me the chance to help the community to get vaccinated. I really appreciate the effort that the Princeton Senior Resource Center had with the seniors and then with the whole community, giving some outreach to the Hispanic community. Very, very big effort from the Princeton Senior Resource Center to help the community in Princeton as a whole to get vaccinated.
She is living in one of our housing communities here in Princeton, and Sharon, along with the Princeton Health Department, arranged for her to be vaccinated in her home for her 102nd birthday, and she was just thrilled to have that as her birthday gift.
Sharon called me and told me they were coming, and the things she said that she didn't tell them, that day was my birthday, 102. And I said to her, make sure the needle is sharp, because this is some tough skin. She had already given me the shot. I didn't even feel it all.
Being part of the Vaccine Navigator program was so rewarding. It was, I think a lot of us right now are sort of feeling very isolated and struggling to find purpose in our day-to-day lives. And it was awesome to be able to spend, sorry, I'm getting choked up. Awesome to be able to spend, sometimes it was 10 minutes, sometimes it was an hour and a half or longer, just focusing on getting this one person what they needed. I remember being able to get one woman her shot on, I think it was her 85th birthday, which was so special.
There are so many people that I want to thank for making this program possible. First, I want to thank our incredible staff and all the volunteers who put in so much hard work to secure these appointments for people who are desperately in need. I want to especially thank the 2 grantors, the Karma Foundation and the Burton and Ann Greenblatt Foundation, whose grants enabled us to hire a vaccine coordinator for this program and to train and deploy our volunteers. I want to thank all of our individual donors who your generosity throughout the year empowers our work and is the fuel that we need to be able to do the things that we do, like our Vaccine Navigator program. I want to thank all of our community partners, our annual sponsors, and all of those who work with Princeton Senior Resource Center to make our work possible. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a taste of the work of the Vaccine Navigator program. In the end, we had over 120 volunteers who spoke 13 different languages, many of those that we deployed in service to this program, and assisted over 725 older adults at a time when it was very difficult to navigate the system to get their shot. So I'm grateful again, especially for the partnership with the health department and Jeff and his team, because the work that they've done in our community as a whole has been extraordinary in the last year. There are so many other things that we celebrate over the last 12 months, including having over 3,000 people involved in lifelong learning programs, including 1,200 in our Evergreen Forum. We assisted over 700 clients with technology needs, often becoming a lifeline in the middle of a pandemic, but helping people with their own individual tech needs, as well as tech needs to be able to connect with programs, with medical appointments, and with other things. We had over 997 clients in our social services department receiving care, either individualized or through one of our support group offerings. We had nearly 700 riders of crosstown transportation, which is such an important service that we offer as a community to the older adults in Princeton. There's so many things that have been accomplished through our programming, but some of the things that I'd like to additionally highlight are the credentialing of our staff to become SAGE Platinum certified. SAGE Cares USA is an international program working with LGBTQ plus older adults, and they certify agencies and organizations that work with seniors on cultural competency and working with LGBTQ plus older adults. And that process has been a year-long process of training of the staff and continued work to support the LGBTQ plus community and the older adults in that community in our work together. We've done other work in our diversity, equity, and inclusion frame as a board, as a staff. It's a significant part of our strategic planning. We had wonderful celebrations and events with Reverend Dr. Bernice King, MLK's youngest daughter, in the fall, and then most recently with Princeton native Manoush Zamarodi just a few nights ago. All at the same time as opening our new building at 101 Poor Farm Road, partnering with Pearl to provide social services for their new affordable housing unit that is being built over on the Thanet property, and now beginning to return from the pandemic and increasing our in-person programming and launching hybrid programming in our new facility. And all of this, I believe, as Joan said at the outset, because we've developed a model here in Princeton that, as she said, has been in place for nearly 50 years. We'll celebrate our 50th anniversary in 2024, but a model of a public-private nonprofit partnership between the municipality and the Princeton Senior Resource Center. And that partnership has really enabled us to provide extraordinary services to the residents of Princeton and the surrounding communities. Over 55% of our client base are Princeton residents. The municipality provides nearly 20% of our funding, and we've done that and been able to keep the cost to the municipality lower than any of our surrounding municipalities, including comparable communities like Ewing and West Windsor, whose budgets in some cases are more than double what we do here in Princeton. So we believe that we've been able to provide extraordinary services, compassionate services, and to do it in a way because of the model that has been here for many years, and your partnership in that, to do it in a way that's affordable for our community, and the generosity of our donors who have done extraordinary things, including, we've raised nearly $4.3 million of our $5.1 million, $5.3 million campaign for our new building. And so it's been an extraordinary year. I'm grateful for the partnership of the council and for our community of extraordinary older adults who do amazing things, as we just heard in the celebration just a few minutes ago, who have done and continue to do amazing things in our community. And we look forward to many more years. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you all, and I look forward to our continued partnership.
Thank you, Drew. That was a great little film clip too.
Thanks, Drew.
Any council questions or comments for Drew or Joan? Okay. Terrific. Drew, Joan, thanks. Thank you both. Have a great evening. Appreciate
You're
your time.
welcome. Bye, everybody.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eve. Thank you, David. Thank you, Eve.
Mayor, can I have a couple of words before the library as well? I'll keep it very brief.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks. I'd just like to welcome Bob Ginsberg, who is no stranger to anyone here, I think, head of the Library Board of Trustees, Susan Chernick, who's the finance director at the library, and Jennifer Podolsky, who's the executive director, who arrived mere weeks, I think, or days before COVID started. So she's hoping for a different gift next time she embarks on something new in Princeton. But, as with the PSRC, I just want to pay tribute to the library for continuing to provide an incredibly valuable service to our community, to allow connection virtually, and as soon as was possible, to open the building and bring people in. I think the library, as everyone says, is our community living room, and just provides a real both intellectual and physical gathering spot for the community. And it's been when I came on council and the former mayor was the library liaison, I always said to myself, someday, if Liz ever decides to retire or move on, I will hopefully do this, because I've been a passionate supporter of the library for many years. So it's really an honor to work with all of you. And thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you, Eve. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity for our library officials to address you tonight. I've been in Princeton since 1988 and retired on January 1st after 33 and a half years working in the Princeton Public Schools. I believe I'm the longest serving member of a municipal board, committee, or commission, as I joined the library board in February of 1998. It's been my great privilege to watch our library grow with our community, from its old building on Witherspoon Street, through its temporary life at the Princeton Shopping Center, to its return to its current downtown site. Before I introduce our executive and financial directors, I want to remind everyone that next week is National Library Week, and Tuesday, April 5th is Library Workers' Day. Princeton is fortunate to have such an exemplary, hardworking staff, and it's largely because of them that our library recently received Library Journal's highest rating possible. Our library received 5 stars and is the only library in New Jersey to attain that designation. This is the 6th year in a row that our library has received 5 stars, and Library Journal cited ours as the top performing library, #1 in the entire country in its budget category. Our trustees and I encourage all our library's visitors to acknowledge our library employees next Tuesday. Now it's my pleasure to introduce 2 of those employees, Jennifer Podolsky, our executive director, and Susan Chernick, our finance director.
Thanks, Bob. And thank you to the mayor and council for the invitation to speak here tonight about one of the most beloved places in town, the library. And while the image you may have of the library still rings true, we are a beautiful place to go for some quiet sometimes, and to browse an impressive collection of books. We're long past the time where libraries are known only for the books that we have on our shelves. Libraries are spaces for lifelong learning, civic engagement, and innovation. And because of that, we are a very busy space. The Sands Library building is the busiest public building in town, and it's the only public building open 7 days a week, year round. In fact, we're open 357 days a year. And on the 8 holidays we're closed, thousands of people continue to use our digital resources and free high-speed wireless internet that covers all of Heinz Plaza. Susan will talk about what it takes to operate the busiest public building in the center of town. But first, I want to talk to you about some of the ways that the library is more than just a collection of books. Our staff know that sometimes they are the first person a visitor to Princeton meets. Staff members are ready with a friendly hello and have a wealth of knowledge about the town. They are asked for directions around town and campus, recommendations on what to do while in Princeton, and of course, where to eat. And in the past year, staff have been asked about what COVID protocols are in place in particular venues in town. Princeton might have an official welcome center one day, but until then, we are happy to fulfill that function. When planning for the future of Princeton, Council formed a task force to explore the idea of a community center. The library, in a lot of ways, has long fulfilled many functions of a community center. For generations, we've been a safe space for kids after school and during summers. And kids don't only game here after school, they get homework help from Princeton University students and online homework help 7 days a week. They create podcasts and further explore what they learn in the classroom in one of our reading clubs or at a science, math, or chess program. And it's not just kids. Until the pandemic hit, we hosted a social work intern in conjunction with the Human Services Department who connected people in need with services. Since the pandemic, staff who can communicate in 19 languages have taken on that role and refer people in need of assistance to public and private agencies who can help. Community members who don't speak English can find classes and conversation groups here. More than 60 senior and low and moderate income people have had their tax returns done for free by AARP volunteers. Sorry. And that number continues to grow. Time doesn't permit me to talk about the dozens of partnerships the library has with local agencies that enable us to expand our services and programs. We know that digital literacy is important for everyone and that the digital divide is real, not just among families with students in our schools. This is one of the reasons we have increased our technology operating budget over the past decade. We've recently dedicated more than $120,000 on essential items such as our library things, which allows cardholders to borrow a variety of materials, including laptops, Wi-Fi hotspots, and accessories to make applying for a job or creating content easier for everyone. Our public computers for in-library use were upgraded with new MacBook Airs and iMacs and improved software for better user experiences. We also have robust technology instruction for all ages, from coding classes to our current most popular program, How to Get Photos Off of Your Phone, which had hundreds of registrants. We support the economic growth of Princeton and create opportunities every day with our spaces, services, and programs. As working from home has become a new normal for many, we've seen an increase in the number of entrepreneurs, self-employed individuals, and corporate professionals drawn to our spaces, including meeting rooms equipped with state-of-the-art technology that supports efficient and effective collaboration in the age of social distancing. Fewer businesses are able to make purchases like copiers, printers, and scanners, so our fully equipped business center functions as an office away from the office, with all the tools needed to get things done. We provide access to over 10 subscription databases that support market research and workforce development in order to cultivate a more skilled and informed community. We partner with SCORE and connect budding entrepreneurs with experienced professionals who can provide free mentorship on how to start a new business. In addition to that, our librarians are offering tailored research assistance, planning and implementing special programs throughout the year to create opportunities for small businesses. A letter to the editor last week in Town Topics alerted readers to the growth of the town. This was not news to us. We've been planning for growth since 2015. Several of you have been interviewed for our upcoming strategic plan and realize that the growth of Princeton factors heavily into this plan. Our understanding is that the town could see 1,000 units of new housing built over the next few years, many of which will be subsidized affordable housing for people with low and moderate incomes. Within a block of the library, plans for 45 new units have been approved by the planning board. In a town whose core values are learning and equity, we know that the library is central to the quality of life, particularly for people of limited means. With your help and help of our donors, we will continue to provide resources that lower the cost of living for people of all incomes and backgrounds. After all, we are in the center of it all. And now I'd like to introduce to you our Finance Director, Susan Chernick, who will explain how we pay for the many services that we provide.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good evening to everyone. Last year, we went through the budget in great detail. So this year, we'll only highlight some challenges and opportunities for the library's budget and a little bit about the capital budget. One of the things that the community loves best about the library is our outstanding staff. As you may be aware, employee salaries and benefits make up a majority of most budgets. For the library, it's 74% of the total budget. We take every opportunity to examine staffing needs and make changes when possible. As Jennifer mentioned, we are closed only 8 days of the year. We staff 4 service desks on 3 floors. A few years ago, we attempted to reduce staffing hours by closing one of those, the first floor welcome desk. The library was inundated with complaints from the community until we reopened the desk. As government employees, we participate in but have no control over the escalation of costs for the state's health benefits, pension obligation rates, and payroll taxes. A full 25% of the library's employee expense is allocated to 3 categories: cost of living adjustments, health benefits, and pension obligations. As shown on this slide, since 2014, the average annual increase for COLA is 1.7%, health benefits 3.4%, and pension obligation 5.4%. Even with increases at these levels, the library has worked to maintain a minimal average annual increase to 1.28% for our operating budget and 1.15% in our request for municipal funding. I want to take a moment to brag about how diligently the library staff work to seek efficiencies and the very best value at the lowest cost when making purchases. While there are expenses that are beyond our control, we work tirelessly to find areas of collaboration with town partners to supplement support of our programs. We search for grant opportunities to fund specific project costs, and our fundraising efforts help to support the purchase of technology, materials, and programming expenses so we can offer the community the services they need and want. Our incredibly creative staff pursue every opportunity to find other avenues of funding. When it comes to doing more with less, our staff is focused on looking for ways to reduce costs by negotiating with vendors, sharing services with the school and municipality, and finding ways to do things more efficiently. We have been so successful at minimizing costs over the years that we've been able to offset rising costs in areas outside of our control by scrutinizing costs within our control. I believe we can be proud of an average annual budget increase of only 1.3%. The current economic environment is presenting significant challenges for us. Inflation means rising costs and difficulties with sourcing products. I'm certain this is impacting the municipality as well. We will not stop searching for funding opportunities or reducing costs as best we can, but there are some real challenges ahead. 2 of our main challenges include the high cost of recruiting, training, and retaining great staff during these times of high turnover, especially as the market for candidates is so competitive. Staff can tell you that user habits have changed, and there is a far greater demand for digital content, which is significantly more expensive than print materials. We have kept the materials budget nearly flat for the past 6 years while realizing these escalating costs. but we cannot continue without sacrificing the quality and content of the library's collection. Rising costs this year will be exceptionally challenging for the library, but we will continue to be creative and find the best value for every dollar we spend. Princeton has entrusted their appointed board of trustees and the library staff to care for the municipality's library building, providing a safe, clean, and welcoming environment for the community. The municipality is generous in their support of the library to ensure the building is well maintained. During normal operations, an average of over 2,000 visitors are welcome to the library every day. Visitors use the library not just for stellar materials and programs, but also as a community warming center in the winter and a cooling center during summer's hottest days, as well as the public restroom for downtown. The heavy usage of the building has a huge impact on the wear and tear of furniture and equipment, requiring higher maintenance costs and more frequent equipment replacements. We use operating expenses to cover the cost of general building maintenance and repairs. However, as the building ages, major equipment requires replacement at substantial cost beyond what our operating budget can absorb. We limit capital requests to the municipality to our highest priorities that cannot be covered through our operating budget. This year, we originally requested $525,000 to cover 4 projects. We have since withdrawn 2 of those and have requested $480,000 to fund the remaining 2, which are critical. The municipality's IT director recommended last year that we follow their lead and replace network switches that were deemed obsolete in 2019. These provide the high-speed wireless internet service 24/7 and support public computer usage. The second critical project is to replace the cooling tower and related equipment. The cooling tower installed on the roof in 2004 has shown substantial rusting and wear. For the last 4 years, our facility staff have managed repairs to extend the life of the tower, but its failure could damage the roof and cause the failure of the library's new air conditioning system. The costs we received in 2021 as part of our 2022 capital request are already undervalued. Due to the economic environment, we've been told that the cost for the network switches project has increased $10,000 over the 2021 quote, and we expect the cost to replace the cooling tower will exceed the amount requested. We have created our own building repairs fund from operating revenues to cover costs not included in our capital requests. We will instead use this fund to cover the cost of these capital projects that exceed the amount of our original requests. I clearly remember my first visit to the library and the awe I felt when I considered the comparison to my local library. We are all so proud of everything about our library, from the beautiful building to the extraordinary services we provide to our community. We are so grateful for the municipality's support in allowing us to meet the community's expectations for an excellent free public library. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you this evening.
Thank you. Could you unshare the screen so we can just get a better view of everybody? Thank you very much. Any quick council questions or comments? Michelle.
Thank you for that great presentation and all that you do. It's really terrific. It's really a wonderful amenity and something that was really makes Princeton special. I get a little concerned, and I guess we'll need to do a little deeper dive into what some of these capital expenditures are going to be, and making sure that we're working together. Can you just tell us a little bit about, there's a nice amount of endowment that the library has been able to do some really great fundraising for, but I think it's restricted. Could you just tell us a little bit about how that's restricted and if any of that could go towards any of these capital improvements and other things that are coming down the pike? Because it's concerning.
Well, the endowment it would really need to speak to the Friends and Foundation as they manage the endowment. But it's not, it was done with a 100-year library campaign. The endowment is meant to bridge the gap between what the municipality provides and what we can provide. But it's mainly collections and programming in terms of what people donated towards. And again, I don't have the formula in front of me, but it's meant to be used for the interest, not the principal of the endowment. So I think we'd need a deeper conversation, but the municipality typically maintains its building because you own the library. So usually capital requests are paid for. They really can't be paid for with endowment monies, but I think we'd have to have a deeper conversation with the Friends and Foundation about that if you'd like to know more.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just kind of becoming familiar with that. And I thought for the public, just so people understand that and I think we do have to have maybe a capital plan and look at those things that you mentioned tonight because they are concerning and we do have to make some plans as far as that. So, but it's good to start the conversation before the emergency happens. And I know with supply chain and other problems right now, we probably need to do those plans. And there might be grant money out there too. I'm big on grant money right now. So, looking at all the infrastructure dollars that are coming in, I don't want us to lose the moment where there might be something that could really help. So
absolutely. We'd love to sit down and go over our capital project plan with y'all.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention tonight. And, it's better to have a plan than to react to something when it happens as an emergency. So really appreciate that. All right. Thank you. That's it.
Any other council questions or comments at this time? Leticia?
Yes. No, thank you for that presentation and thank you for all the programming and for really truly being a great community partner with, I know very often we coordinate events and service to our community through our Human Services Department for one. And I was just wondering how, I know during the pandemic, we missed a lot of that. And I was wondering how, whether we're back to some sort of normal with the programming or if there's still some restrictions there.
In terms of library programming and as a whole?
Yes.
Yeah, we're fully back. As you mentioned, during the pandemic, like everyone else, we had switched to mainly all virtual programming. And then as soon as we were able to, we started working in some in-person and hybrid programming. And so we're finding that we still have a pretty large audience with our virtual programming. So now we're kind of doing it all. We're doing in-person, virtual, and hybrid programming. And it's still in demand, and we're having a lot of people attend both virtually and in person. So
and I was
ready.
also, thank you. Yeah, no, I was also interested because you mentioned how previously the library has been used as both a cooling center and a warming center during emergencies. And we have had some emergencies but it was during the pandemic where we had to find alternatives. And so I was wondering.
I know that Human Services reached out to us and we were trying to figure out a way during that time with restrictions and COVID restrictions and how to make it work. And we could have made it work, but on a more limited basis. So it was a little challenging at the time to be able to do what we would normally do, like as in Hurricane Sandy, when everybody came to the library, for the safety of our staff also and the public. It was a little more difficult to do those things, but typically we are a warming and a cooling center officially and unofficially. So we'd be happy to talk more about that.
Yeah, but again, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leighton?
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to say that I did participate in an hour-and-a-half conversation with a young lady, Allison Tremarco, who is doing the legwork on the library and their advance into the future. And I just want to acknowledge that we do have a magnificent library here in Princeton. And I want to give a shout out to Kim Dorman and the rest of the staff there, because you guys build community. You think outside of the box. Our library here in Princeton is not books and business as usual. You really get after it. And for that, we owe you a debt of gratitude. And last but not least, I'll make sure I get my book back on time.
Thank you for that.
Anything else from the council members? Eve.
Just real quick, thanks for a great presentation. And, you know, having been around when the municipality made the decision to, you know, to build a new library and to keep it in the center of town, I'll say that, you know, I personally feel we're obligated to, you know, to maintain the building and to, you know, make it function as the library was intended to be. And I also wanted, picking up a little bit on what Leighton said on, you know, Kim Dorman's work and the work of many others, to call out, you know, one of many ways the library is playing a leading role in the community is sponsoring the Pride Picnic. That will be, is it June 3rd? Did I get that?
Sounds right, Eva. Yeah.
Okay, I think
That
June
sounds right.
3rd at the Princeton Shopping Center. And, you know, I think that's one of the many ways, both in the library building and outside of the library building, that the library really is such a prime mover in the community. So thank you to all who helped make that happen.
Okay. Thank you all. Bob, Jennifer, Susan, thank you very much. And that event at the shopping center is Friday, June 3rd. So everybody's got the right date. Okay. Thank you very much for your time this evening. All right. Next up, work session, Witherspoon Street, Phase 2. This should take about 6 minutes. Awesome.
It's our favorite topic. Adam, can you bring over Justin as well, please?
Yes, no problem. He should be on his way.
Thank you. So many faces, hard to see everyone. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're here to talk about Witherspoon Street Phase 2, which extends from Green Street to Franklin Lee area. Justin and I are going to collaboratively give the presentation tonight. And I'm sure Jim and Michael will jump in as well with us. So with that, let me share my screen. And we'll get moving for the evening here. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay. So we've worked with many different people in many different departments looking at the Witherspoon Street corridor, also with our consultant T&M Associates. As some of you or most of you should remember, we started this process back in 2020 before COVID. And we've now gotten to the point where Phase 1 will start construction in April. So now we're looking ahead to Phase 2 and Phase 3, where we do have state municipal aid grants with deadlines. The Phase 2 project needs to be awarded for a construction contract by November of this year. Otherwise, we would be possibly losing a $625,000 grant. And then the following year, we also have another grant for $650,000 that if we don't move that phase ahead to construction by November 2023 could be lost as well. We've had multiple meetings for public feedback. It started before COVID with the first design charrette that we held at the Monument Hall building. As we moved ahead in phase one, we also started working with the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood for different public meetings, one of which was in May 2021. Here's some of the feedback. I'm not going to read through it all, but a lot of different feedback about pedestrian bike improvements, lighting, promenade feel. Then moving into September, we attended a Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood meeting. At that meeting, we received this feedback, which at the time valued parking more than bike lanes, indicated that a majority of the respondents who were at the meeting typically travel uptown from the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood. And they typically travel by foot or car more. And then out of that meeting, some of the requested safety improvements really focused a lot more on the sidewalks, the pedestrian space, fixing our stormwater issues, but also there was mention about addressing speeding and bike solutions, among other things. So then we fast forward to earlier in March this year, when we went again to the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood meeting, and kind of a little bit different opinion, or there was more focus coming up on bike lanes. Still, the modes of travel really were more walking and car driven. Sorry for the pun on that one. But out of the 12 people that were there, there was a priority given to separate bike lanes. And so here's again more comments. You'll see that some people liked A, some people liked B. A lot of different opinions on what to do for the roadway. So just to give a frame of reference, Witherspoon Street from Green to Franklin is definitely a different character from what we had up in the Central Business District. We have a different historic district. This is more residential business zoning. And we do have about a 50-foot clear working space from like anything that's built on the edges of the right-of-way or in the right-of-way. We have two 11-foot travel lanes on the road. We have an 8-foot parking lane. We have a somewhat narrow green strip between curb and sidewalk in which to have trees to create a promenade feel. And as you can see, there's a lot of demands for the pedestrian, the curb space on the roadway. You'll also notice we have quite a few utility poles. That will be a topic in the discussion later on, but I'm just trying to set the stage, and I'm going to turn it over to Justin. And he, after I show you one more slide, he'll give you a detailed comparison of two different concepts we're looking at, but also to give you just another perspective of what we're looking at. As I said, we've got really 50 feet of clear space because there are multiple places where we have some sort of an intrusion into the right-of-way, whether it is a wall, whether it's the fence for the cemetery. And if we don't have to, well, especially with a library, we do not want to relocate the fence along the cemetery. So we're really working with a 50-foot clear space. And as I mentioned, we've got the utility poles, about 18 of them in this corridor, very close to the roadway, and the 30-foot wide roadway. We do have existing utilities. We have water, sewer, gas mains, communications all under the road. You will notice that right now this does not show storm drainage because that is one of the big components of this project, is to extend storm drainage into the lower sections, the southern sections of Witherspoon Street, because we do have quite a few ponding issues and safety issues. So that will be part of the project, as well as detention of stormwater, because we do have impacts lower down as the drainage hits Valley Road. So with that, I'll turn it over to Justin, and he'll walk through the two concepts that we've evaluated tonight.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public. So as Deanna said, we have these two concepts from the input we've received so far from some of the neighbors, PBAC and others, HPC as well. This first concept A looks pretty similar actually to what's out there now. This really does not represent a radical change from the way Witherspoon Street functions currently. We're just looking to improve it, and mainly improve it by slowing cars down and getting them to stop when you're in the crosswalk or when you're waiting for the crosswalk. Because as most people, you don't have to spend too much time on Witherspoon Street before you'll try to cross. And, there's been times 5, 6, 7 cars go by before you could walk across, even though, of course, the state law says they have to stop. But, I'm not going to take my chances against the car. And also, it's pretty often you'll see cars going maybe 35, even 40 miles an hour. And as we know, the chance of a fatal injury, did I get kicked off? But I'm back. The chance of a fatal injury or serious injury, it's exponentially higher when cars are going that much faster than the posted speed limit of 25. So as I mentioned, we're adding some traffic calming features in both designs, starting with this one, adding some crosswalks. One member of the neighborhood at one of our earlier meetings said something like complete the box or complete the crosswalk, which you'll see all throughout the town where there's crosswalks going at every corner. On Witherspoon Street, for whatever reason, there's only about 4 or 5 crosswalks for this section. Most crossings don't have them on both the north and the south side. So we're looking to add them. Quarry Street doesn't have any crosswalks right now, and we're looking to add 2 there as well across Witherspoon. We're looking to add raised crosswalks as well. These are somewhat similar to if you ever go over on Hodge Road and Morven Place, where it's almost like it's somewhat similar because that's more of a table that goes throughout the whole intersection. What we're looking to do here is more so if you ever go to the Route 1 ShopRite over in Lawrence, that plaza with the REI and the Ross, where the crosswalk's raised, so it slows the cars down. You don't walk down into the road and then back up. You'd walk one solid way across. We're also looking to add bump outs. These would cut some of the distance down for pedestrians and also make you more visible to the cars, and raise some sidewalks on the private side streets, which would be similar to what was recently put in on Bank Street. Bicycles would continue to share the roadway with vehicles in this concept, again, with the thought that the vehicles are slowing down. We're looking to upgrade widen sidewalks where possible to minimum 5 feet, which is the ADA requirement. Maintaining the healthy trees on Witherspoon Street, which, that's prefaced by healthy, meaning some of the ones that have been deemed failing or not as healthy will need to go away. But then we're looking to add more on both sides of the street. We're looking to add some pedestrian street lighting too, for drivers to see at night. Of course, some parking spaces would need to be removed to add some of these features from what's there now. Of course, we don't have the parking problems or difficulties, I should say, that you see further uptown. But of course, parking everywhere in town is valuable. And it'd be similar to right now where people put their garbage cans in the buffer area and their recycling cans. So I'll walk you virtually basically from the Robeson House to Miss Kim's Deli, or just before the deli, and show some of these features. So beginning that there's a bump out and a crosswalk at Green Street over there. You could see how if you're waiting to cross the street, instead of going the 30 feet that you would now, you only go about 22 feet. And also, like I said earlier, it's almost like the pedestrian has a head start compared to what's there now, where you're back further behind cars. Because like I mentioned earlier, sometimes when those 5, 6, and 7 cars aren't stopping, it's not always because they're nefarious or not carrying people. It truly is sometimes people look hidden behind cars. Most of the parking is maintained here between Green and Quarry, closer to the Central Business District. A lot of those spots you see taken up on a Thursday, Friday night, Saturday night, dinner time. There's a raised crosswalk going to the Presbyterian Church. Like I mentioned earlier, there's currently no crosswalks on Quarry Street, so we're looking at a striped one as well. There's an area in front of the church that could be used for drop off. We left that intentionally after hearing what some of the congregants at the 2 churches over here said. They'd rather have a meeting space out front or a place where they could be dropped off, picked up, than have trees or anything else in the way. Continuing down the street, we're looking to add a mid-block crossing between roughly the Chinese restaurant and the Mexican grocery store. People have to park on the neighborhood side over there. And right now, frankly, they're just not going to walk all the way down to Green or all the way up to McLean to go across. So they just walk across, and you know, there are times where I see people that are frightened as they're returning back with their Chinese food bags. So we're looking to formalize that, add some of that bump out space as well. And to there's a pretty decent elevation change over there. So we'd make a 2-level crosswalk, or a 2-level sidewalk, excuse me, up there with a railing and a wall. Over on Shirley Court, that's where one of those raised pedestrian crossings would be. So like I mentioned, similar to what's on Bank Street now, or what was just put in on Bank Street, where you'd walk across at the same level. Is there anything? And you'll see like the bump out areas in that past one, but also in other sections would be spaces where in the future we could put garbage cans, bike racks, benches, things like that are out of the way of the sidewalk. So they're mostly not there now, but we would have space. And one thing I should mention before I get too far along is, so the little orange dots are those new pedestrian lights that would be placed throughout, not just the overhead ones that are out there now. And the green markings you see in the middle of the streets, those are enhanced sharrows. The bike mobility plan from 2017 calls for enhanced shared markings on Witherspoon Street. So those would actually be green backgrounds. So people see that bikes belong in the street here, not just the white on black ones that we have now. There's a new crosswalk to the AME Church on McLean Street that doesn't currently exist, as well as that space outside where congregants would be able to meet up before or after services. Another thing I should mention, just for everyone's ease of reading this, so the outlines of trees are existing ones. If they have an X over them, they would be removed. And then the green ones are new ones that would be put in as part of this project. On the cemetery side, they're taller shade trees because we don't have the utility wires over there. On the neighborhood side, it's smaller trees that wouldn't, have to be cut because of the wires. So the bus stop, all of the bus stops on this part of Witherspoon Street would stay where they are. They would be have bus bays painted to show where the buses are. We explored today with the Traffic Safety Committee potentially putting another parking spot on that street instead of the one lonely one. So we'll look into that as well. There's a new crosswalk. Oh, Deanna, if you go back real quick. There's a new crosswalk going on on the southern part of Lytle, it would go directly to Delicioso Bakery now, and another raised crosswalk to the left of that, or raised pedestrian crossing on Witherspoon Lane to the left of that. Just making sure I'm not forgetting anything. The bus stop would stay currently in front of the Pinnell Learning Center, and we would add a raised pedestrian crossing there, a raised crosswalk. This is really such an important route for students from the high school and the middle school. If you're ever out there, when they're walking across, that crossing guard has his work cut out for him. So that crosswalk plus the one further down to the left would slow the traffic down on both sides to that one in the middle where students often cross. There's a new bump out on Franklin Lane in anticipation. We know there's going to be some more units over there. That shortens the distance, just like the ones that cross Witherspoon Street. And then, as I mentioned, there's the raised crosswalk and the bump out in front of the Avalon apartment building. So there's parking on both sides there, parallel parking, and it's often very tough, even as a pedestrian, to see the cars. So leads you to believe it's tough as a driver to see the pedestrians. So that's part of the reason to give the pedestrians that kind of head start, to give them that extra space to look out, see where the cars are, and have the cars see where they are. So then our second concept, concept B, this came out of a meeting with the Bike Advisory Committee and some council members. And the first thing you'll see is a southbound bike lane. So on the neighborhood side, you'd be able to ride towards uptown, towards Robeson Place. And the reason for that is because that's going uphill, so you're probably going slower. You'd still go towards the municipal building. On the cemetery side, you'd still share the lane. With this concept, we're also looking to slow down the cars and allow people to cross with some of those traffic calming features I just mentioned. So as I mentioned, we're looking to add more of those crosswalks, close the box. We would need to add in islands, and this will be more apparent on the next couple slides, but we still need to find places for the utility poles, street signs, everything that's out there now, fire hydrants. So I'll show that in the next one. We'd still raise the sidewalks on the private side streets. Bikes would operate between the sidewalk and where cars are parked on the neighborhood side. And then if you're going north, you could go on John Street downhill, or go on the shared northbound lane on Witherspoon Street, as you would do today. We're looking to widen the sidewalks similar to the other one, add some pedestrian street lighting, although this might be different than what's proposed in the other, to shorter bollard style lights. On the neighborhood side of the street, the existing trees would have to be removed to accommodate the bike lane. And then they would be added into these islands that I'll touch upon in a minute. On the cemetery side, the green buffer would have to be minimized to fit everything in. And to do all this, slightly more parking spaces will need to be removed than the last one. It sounds to me like 45% is kind of the minimum as we still figure out what we're going to do with the utility poles. So I would look at that as a minimum number. And then lastly, it's right now, people put their garbage cans and their recycling cans in that buffer area. And then most of the time, the recycling people, they put it back there. Sometimes they don't. But that space would no longer be there. So the garbage cans, people's personal garbage cans and recycling cans would have to go somewhere else, potentially the parking spaces, hopefully not the bike lanes, hopefully not the sidewalks. Here are some examples that we looked at for inspiration, or we received from others too. If you look at it, would look somewhat similar to the mock-up on the left, where the cars would be to the bicyclists' left, the bicycles would be to the pedestrians, side over there. because again, it's a one-way bike lane. The watercolor to the right shows kind of how these mature trees could look in islands interspersed with parking. Down below that, you'll see how the islands could function. There's obviously not a bike lane in this picture, but where you could still have bike racks and trees coexisting. That's similar to the one to the right, showing the utility poles as well. And then down here, we received some pictures, I think, of Amsterdam, which is where this inspiration came from some of the bike advisory committee members. So starting again at the Robeson House, or actually before I even get into that, the bottom of your page is the neighborhood. So then moving up or moving towards the center of the street, the speckled part is the sidewalk. The gray part is where the bike lane would be. And then you see the parking spaces as well as those islands that would need to hold all the other things. Of course, this would require, unfortunately, having to remove some hedges that are currently there, maybe some fences. I'm not sure off the top of my head. And as I mentioned earlier, all the trees on in the right of way on the neighborhood side would have to be removed. So you see a lot of the green ones there for ones that would go in the islands. So the islands also function as bump outs. They, similar to what was presented before, they'll narrow how far a person has to cross from 30 feet to about 22. And hopefully as they stick out, that also slows the cars. There's the raised pedestrian crossings on Shirley Lane, Witherspoon Lane. One question that we have as we flesh out this idea is where exactly the driveways would slope down. I know on here you're seeing them in the bike lanes, but I'm not sure how that would work. So if they have to go on in the sidewalk area, then you have some issues with people, using walkers or wheelchairs or even pushing strollers going down and up a couple times. There's 12 curb cuts in this area, some to private driveways, some to parking lots, and those would have to be accommodated through the bike lane. There's still the new crosswalks in just about all the spots that were mentioned earlier. So here in front of the AME Church, in front of Delicioso Bakery, the bus bays are still painted on. And Deanna, you can move on to the next one. So there's a question here about if a bus or a bike lane would be possible on this block between Clay and Lee Avenue. This is where the parking shifts to the Avalon side. So what we're showing here is an unprotected bike lane, but the utility poles are in the space where it would be. So if it's not possible to underground those, this kind of portion would have to be a shared street still. There's also a question about how those raised crosswalks would function with the bike lanes, and what level the bike lanes would be on as well. If they'd be the same as the sidewalk, if they'd be the same as the road, or if they'd be somewhere in between, because then you're kind of talking about almost like little valleys and dips, which is not the intention of the raised crosswalk. So then here's a comparison between the two concepts and what's existing out there. There's improvements in the striped crosswalks and the raised crosswalks. Actually, we currently don't have any raised ones. Parking spaces would be removed, 20 in concept A, probably a minimum of 17 in concept B, as we accommodate those, the things you see in the lower left, the utility poles, bike parking, fire hydrants, things like that have to kind of be thought out. There is, in concept A, there's a net gain of 27 trees, most of which would be new. In concept B, there's a net gain of 6 trees. There's still the 18 utility poles that we would have to relocate in those islands that Deanna will touch on next. compared to 1 with concept A. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the question of, are people going to put their garbage cans in the bike lane? Are they going to put them on the sidewalk, or are they going to put them in parking spots? Without that buffer zone, which is kind of the, it's not the sexiest part of the street, but it serves a purpose. Basically, right now, the way I kind of conceptualize this is if you were to walk on the block where like Studio Hillier is, the trees on the roadside and the bus, the area that people stand waiting for the bus over there in front of the old school, that would more or less be replaced by a bike lane. And then the poles would be moved inward alongside the parking.
Thanks, Justin. So as Justin mentioned, the bike lane would be placed in the same bit of real estate where we have the existing utility poles. We know that there is considerable interest in getting the utilities underground. This is a very crude kind of rendition, but we just wanted to be able to show you the idea of where these islands would need to be if we cannot put the utilities underground. So the bike lane is represented by the yellow stripe. Just in this location, you can see at least 4 different utility poles. So those would have to either be placed in individual islands on the roadside, or you could incorporate them into one large island. And in that case, that extra space could be used for the bollard style lights, trees, fire hydrants, a park pay station, kiosk. All of those items could be relocated into those islands, especially if you did incorporate that into one large island. And so we had a meeting with PSC&G recently about how viable it might be to put the utilities underground. They were very sorry, excuse me, I changed the slide. They were very hesitant to believe that this electrical system could go underground. It would not be the same type of system that you have in the central business district. They indicated that we would need to place transformers above ground within the right-of-way with different or specific requirements, such as they needed to be 10 foot away from a combustible structure. They're 8 feet by 10 feet, which is essentially the size, the 8 foot corresponds with the width of the parking lane. So potentially all of those transformers could be sitting in those islands as well. And I just wanted to give you a sense. So on this slide, I pointed out that there are multiple transformers on some of these poles. I think this pole has 3. This pole has 2. PSC&G indicated that based on the loads of electrical service for the adjacent properties, that would determine the number of these above ground transformers that we would need to have along the street. And depending on where you construct this, if you constructed it on the west side, there really is not enough space if you need to work around where the existing utility poles are. We didn't get into a lot of detail about the size of the facility. I think if you did really look into this more, the west side may not be the feasible location. The east side might be a better location for putting the utilities underground. They indicated you can't put trees on top of these in the future. And their estimate was double digits, millions of dollars to actually do the undergrounding. So we just wanted to give you this background that we received from the utility company. Just, they can't be in the roadway. They need to be under the pedestrian space. There is the need for above ground transformers. And then we still need to look at how do we get telecommunications underground. So while we're not saying it can't be done, we are hearing that it's highly unlikely. And so we need, as we look forward to the design of this roadway, we need to have an understanding of what the expectation is. Is there an expectation that we're going to hold off the road project until more time can go into looking at this undergrounding? Or what we recommend doing is move ahead with the road project, and if funds become available, or if there is a viable solution that is found, that at that point go in and put the utilities underground. But in that case, if we move ahead with the road project and we use concept B, we're still looking at having to relocate 18 utility poles to accommodate a bike lane. And that is a very time-consuming and costly process. And it's very invasive to the neighborhood. But back to the pros and cons of A and B, and I'll turn that back over to Justin.
Great. So concept A, again, this is the one that's not a huge change. The goal is to slow the cars down and make them stop with those traffic calming measures I mentioned earlier, make it safer for pedestrians to get across with those, retain that promenade character that we heard from some of the neighbors that they're looking for. Most of the existing trees will remain, and of course, when you plant trees, you got to wait a little bit for them to grow up. So if we could keep them the way they are, it might be more favorable. Minimal changes to the buildings and houses on Witherspoon Street, so not having to remove some hedges and things like that. The additional room for benches, bike racks, garbage cans, whatever else on those bump outs. Some of the cons of concept A are that loss of parking, over a third of what's out there. And of course, there's no dedicated bike lanes. People on bikes would continue to share the street with cars. Now, concept B, the one with the bike lane, the pros of it are that you get a protected bike lane southbound for 4 blocks and potentially 1 block unprotected. Of course, that also means you would start in a shared lane and you would also end in a shared lane. One of the people at the neighborhood meeting, they asked, well, then where do I go? Because it's going to be one way or the other way on Witherspoon Street. So, you have to start a network somewhere. Right now, this is a little, you go from bike lane to shared to then dispersing out away from Witherspoon Street. And again, this has some of those same safer pedestrian crossing opportunities through the traffic calming. Some of the cons of this would be losing the parking, 45% or more, depending on how many islands we need to put out and what those look like. Conflicts between people on foot and people on bikes at intersections, or people have to step in from the sidewalk to the bike lane, things like that. Also conflicts between people on bikes and people in cars, particularly people backing out of their driveways that have to go into the bike lane to then see past the parking lane of cars to then see oncoming traffic. Another con would be the loss of the mature trees, including all the ones on the neighborhood side, and fewer opportunities to replace them. Like I mentioned before, it would involve removing that green buffer on the neighborhood side, which then means we have to find space for all the street signs, the utility poles, where people are going to stand for the bus, areas for bike racks. And then there's a question of where the sidewalks are going to go. Do they slope down the sidewalks where, you know, people are walking? Where do the garbage cans go? Is it going to end up being, you know, none of those options is really a good one. What's the least worst one? And then having to add new parking pay stations like you see in the central business district, and pulling up the meters because there's not going to be room for one by every spot.
I don't know if you were taking this one or I was, Justin. We also attended a special Historic Preservation Commission meeting to show both of the concepts that were presented here tonight. There was unanimous support of some version of Concept A. Again, they were really leaning and emphasizing the promenade character of the neighborhood. They felt that the bike lanes would make it more urban, which does alter the historic streetscape that was part of the historic designation. There was the concern about the loss of trees, while trees also, in addition to the traffic calming that they mentioned, they also do help with stormwater as well. So that was the opinion that we heard at the HPC meeting. And so we're going to wrap up with the staff recommendation is to, we support Concept A. We are seeking tonight to get your approval to move into the design phase with Concept A, so that we can meet our deadline of November 19th, 2022 to award a construction contract. It's an opportune time now with the launch of the planning study to update the master plan, that the Pedestrian and Bike Advisory Committee could explore different north-south routes in the area to help move the school kids from the area schools to the uptown areas. And like I mentioned with the utilities, if we can decouple the idea of putting the utilities underground from this project, that will allow us to move ahead. I know there's a desire to go after federal grants or earmarks or other things. It's just been our experience that federal funds, especially if we don't even have a grant in hand at this point, will delay our progress. I think our last project on Harrison Street, it was 5 years between when we got our grant and when construction moved ahead, because there's just a lot of paperwork and process involved in that. So with that, I am going to stop my share, and I can always put slides up if there are any questions.
I do.
Yeah.
Deanna, Justin, thank you very much. Michelle.
Thank you. So first of all, the idea of this is not something that is just a new concept. I mean, the protected bike lane that goes between the sidewalk and a row of steel parked cars would really protect the school children going to school and back. So you've got CP, you've got the high school, and you've got the middle school. Not to mention the new affordable housing and other housing units that are going to come in, and to talk about the Latinx community, particularly in that community that uses bikes for transportation, as well as other adults. I mean, not all adults are comfortable on a road, and you can slow the traffic down, but you've got buses, you've got trucks, and all it takes is a second to take your eye off the wheel and hit a bicyclist. If a road bike who's going fast is riding on the road, that's one thing. But when you have that kind of traffic, I really would emphasize that this is a main corridor, and to put this kind of money and effort and just to jump right to saying that you can't put a bike lane there, I think is just too quick. I mean, this is a concept that we've just started talking about. And I think we made a lot of assumptions in this, but I'd really like time to dig into that a little bit more in terms of, yes, we know that it's long-term and you'd have to be able to say that there's two plans, one with the poles and one without. Because I agree, we're going to try as hard as we can to get federal earmark funding or infrastructure money to bury those poles and to do what we can. And we've got a lot of work ahead of us to do that. So I agree. I think you have to have plan A, plan B within that structure to say, do it with the poles or without. But I have to say, I'm not sure of your measurements in terms of what's going to go where. And, you know, if you maybe narrow and don't have the sharrow on the one side, do you have room for those utility poles on the other side? You've also said that you can't move the parking from one side to the other. You'd need to have a straight shot to the school. You'd have to move the parking to the other side. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in this plan in order to really look at it. But my feeling is this is an opportunity that's like once in a generation to redo the street, and it is the main corridor. I mean, how else are you going to get from Valley Road to, you know, to the schools and then back to the Hamilton-Wiggins corridor, which hopefully will be the next thing that we look at in terms of a bike mobility plan. I mean, this is a main corridor, and I just think it's such a lost opportunity if we just dismiss it offhand. And I'd really like a chance to not rush this. And I can't imagine that we can't spend a couple more weeks to review in detail those details of where you put the poles, how wide the street is, how wide the bike lane is, what the buffer is, and where you could put the poles. I just would really like some more time to work on this. Thanks.
I would just have to jump in and say, I don't think anybody brushed off concept B. It's pretty obvious that staff has put a lot of time into this, and so probably has our engineering firm. I don't know how much money we've spent with the engineering firm that we didn't plan on, but so anyway, I would just say a fair amount of time and effort's already gone into this. So I don't think anybody brushed anything off, but anyway, David.
Yeah.
David, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I am going to support the staff recommendation on this, and I'll tell you why. I'm not persuaded by, you know, some of these issues of where you put the utility poles, where you put the parking pay stations, where you put the lights. I think a lot of that can be worked out. My major concern is a safety concern with the buffered bike lane, which is that there is an enormous potential for conflict with cars that are going in and out of both driveways and the side streets, and a lot of conflict with pedestrians who would need to cross the bike lane to get to the crosswalks, of which there are many. And I think that, you know, where we see this as a successful design tends to be in places like New York City, big cities with long blocks and not large numbers of driveways crossing the bike lanes. And so, and not large numbers of crosswalks either for conflict with pedestrians. You know, you look in New York City at the avenues, and they're, you know, they're a fifth of a mile long. Probably, you know, you have the one crosswalk at the end of phase 2 of Witherspoon and one at the beginning of the phase 2 of Witherspoon. That would be the analogy if you thought about the way this works in New York. So from a safety standpoint, it's not, that's where I'm coming from. And I'm sure, you know, my friends on the Bike Advisory Committee will be very upset with me for saying it, but that's where I'm coming down on this.
I have a question. I've heard that before. I don't understand that though. What's the difference between having a protected bike lane or bikes riding on sharrows on the road? Aren't they going to have the same conflicts?
Not at all, because when a driveway, when someone's coming in or out of a driveway, they have much more opportunity to see a bicyclist who's in the road than they do a bicyclist who's essentially on the sidewalk, which is what we're talking about with this. I mean, essentially, we've got a wide sidewalk here with part of it dedicated to bicyclists and part of it dedicated to pedestrians. But the point is that people come out of their driveways, you know, and immediately, as soon as they're past their house, past the building, they're in the pedestrian and bicycle real estate. And it's not as bad for pedestrians because they move so slowly, but bicyclists move quickly enough that they can sneak up on a motorist who's trying to back out of their driveway, you know, in a fraction of a second. So that's why it's different.
Well, then I don't think you can have any kind of slow bicycle lanes anywhere in Princeton. We're going to have a problem no matter where you try and put those kinds of bike lanes.
Well, buffered bike lanes. I think, you know, I've been an advocate for bike lanes that are on the roadway, which is like Sharrow's, but better.
Yeah,
and it's not as good for unconfident cyclists. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot safer for the bicyclists who do use it, and it avoids the conflicts between cars leaving driveways much better than with this kind.
And you don't think the people who live in the driveways are going to know that they have cyclists that are going by?
It's a matter of their line of sight is the problem. I mean, you have so little area there. If you're backing out, you've really got a problem, because you might, I think as David just said, part of your vehicle is going to be either in the sidewalk or the bike lane part, and you still might not even be able to see up and down the street. So it's problematic. Okay, let me just give other council members a chance to jump in. Mia, you have your hand up?
Well, I mean, we did discuss this in traffic safety this morning, and you know, what David said was the same as what he said now. I mean, we have a bit of tension here between the confident cyclists who are going more rapidly, and so they are more endangered by the vehicles coming out of the driveways. And then there are the rest of us who are not as confident and are going more slowly and feel and probably are more protected in the protected bike lane than we would be in a street setting. There are probably more unconfident cyclists in Princeton than confident cyclists, but at any rate, my major, issue, or the thing that I cared the most about, was burying the power lines. And Deanna, you said, that this was not a no, it was just, can we spend more time to explore? But given the price tag that you just put in there, it really is a no. If it is in fact that much, that's a no, which is, maybe there's really nothing we can do until we are able to persuade the state to change the framework of how they do this, which is really disheartening. There was one thing you had mentioned, Deanna, which was a slightly different framework in how you characterize. I don't know if it was more commercial or some way of characterizing Lower Witherspoon that might allow us to bury them. Do you recall that?
So the area in the central business district is defined as a network. We tried to pursue a good definition for what a network is and how it's designated. It sounds like it is a very old designation. It probably, best we could come up with, it probably went back to the 1920s. So if you can imagine uptown area with Witherspoon Street, Nassau Street, the more wide open, unfettered space, that didn't have all of the utilities already built into the space. They, at that time, in Princeton, as in many other municipalities with commercial districts, designated these network areas. And in those network areas, they were able to build really large underground duct systems with vaults, and they were mainly outside of the road space. And like I said, everything was underground, but PSE&G is saying that would not apply to this area of Witherspoon Street north of Paul Robeson, that it would not be a completely underground system. And that's where they got into the whole discussion of these above ground transformers. Something like you would see, when a new Home Depot or Lowe's Nassau Park shopping mall area goes in, you often see these large transformer boxes. And that's what they said would need to be put in place for Witherspoon Street. So I don't know if there is an option to go with this network idea anywhere else in our municipality.
Well, somehow they do this in Europe. I don't know why we're not able to do it here. I hope we can, if not now, in the near future, figure out a way to start doing it in Princeton. And so the final thing I just want to say is that there don't seem to be that many people from the public who are here tonight, which is to participate in this, which is disappointing because this is so important. But I would like to hear from the audience, from the public, before we go further. I mean, after all of council has spoken.
Yeah, that's our normal practice, which we would still do tonight. Eve, do you want to go next?
Yeah, that's actually a somewhat of a good segue to, I have a couple of questions and then a couple of comments. So Deanna, just to clarify what the bike lanes and the underground power lines are completely separate. So if for some reason we were able to go with the underground power lines, the description of what we would have to do would be the same regardless of whether or not we had a bike lane, a dedicated bike lane in place. I think that's the case, but I just want to confirm. All right. Thank you. And then my other question, which is a little tougher, and here's where it ties into Mia's comment. I was disappointed that this material didn't make it into the council packet. I don't know how many people knew that we were having this discussion and taking this decision tonight. So I'm wondering, I know that we have a timeline with a start to construction in going out to bid in November. And can you, I don't want to do what we did with the first part and, play around with the design over and over and over again. But I would, because this is a project, a once in a generation project, because I think, a lot of people may not have known about it or been able to pursue the materials ahead of time. Pursue is not the right word. Peruse the materials ahead of time and really kind of absorb them. And I include myself in that, even though we had the traffic safety meeting this morning. So a question that I have is, do we have any time at all to push back this decision from tonight, which honestly, I'm not entirely comfortable saying no to the bike lane option at this time, despite many of the concerns. And I understand these are very valid and important concerns. And I just spent a couple of minutes while one of my colleagues was talking, and I apologize for that, looking at bike lane pictures of bike lanes in New York City. And that one point about the number of, they are in places where there are not consistent interruptions, where there's a very long length of bike lane with a crosswalk, but not with a lot of driveways, not with a lot of interruptions. And so maybe that may not be something we can have here, but I'm not quite ready to give it up. So, okay, a long and short of it is, can we push this? What is our timeline working backwards from D-Day in November when we need to have, go out to bid to today? Is there any wiggle room?
So actually, November is when you need to act on a bid that we've already received. So it's when we are actually hiring the consultant or the contractor. So I think Tagel had set it up, and I don't have a copy in front of me of the schedule, that we would be submitting plans to the Department of Transportation in July. Do you have it handy, Jim?
I don't have it in front of me, but that is correct. It'd be in July,
Okay.
and that we would have to be out to bid in September in order to award by November.
So walk me through, if the plans, approved plans have to leave us in July. What does that mean in terms of, what is the drop dead date by which this decision needs to be made? And do we have any wiggle room to have an opportunity to bring in the community so that, I know different portions of the community have been spoken to, HPC, Witherspoon Jackson, Bike Committee, but I don't know if everybody really had a chance to know.
So we had been working off of a March 31st deadline. I think we could extend our community discussion. Maybe not as long as a month. So
But we only have
yes.
2 meetings in April, right? April 11th. Let's just look at the calendar real quick.
I understand that. To me, this is important enough that.
Right. That's why I just want to get Deanna's.
Yeah.
I want to throw actual dates out and not just
Yeah.
just floating.
I mean, we could, even if we could add a meeting to, whatever, I'm just talking off the top of my head because whatever, take 2 weeks from tomorrow, assuming there's not a school board meeting, which there probably is, but whatever, another night that we could meet and really get input from the community, and have a chance to have, some of the issues that Michelle raised, maybe more information on the power lines underground, although I don't think that'll be, I would appreciate that to, really to have the community feel they were heard, they had an opportunity, they knew that this meeting was coming up and was focused on this issue, which, is of great significance to the town. But I don't want to do a Jeff Speck on you. And
we can do, I'm on vacation the week of the 11th, so I would not be at that council meeting. So that's where I'd be looking at Justin and Jim and Michael, if they are willing to step in and carry.
I don't think, Deanna, we can't do it without you. That just would not be a productive approach.
So that would mean either next week or 3 weeks.
Yeah, but the real question, I think, Deanna, is this: if we were to change the concept, how much time would be needed for T&M to design that and still meet all your other deadlines? So that's really what's going to drive, I think, the answer to Eve's question. Is that give us a week to consider that? Does it give us 2 weeks, 3 weeks? What, right? Because you don't want to lose the $625,000 grant.
Right.
Because then you not only might you lose that, but then you'd probably put the potential of losing the next grant, which is another 650,000. So now you don't want to lose about almost $1.3 million worth of grants. So I just want to be real clear that we agree on a date if we're going to prolong the discussion, so that we don't do something that then we look at later and say, geez, that wasn't too smart.
So T&M needs 2.5 months to get through final design. So if we work backwards from July, let me open my calendar. So yeah, if we can have a decision by the week of the 18th of April.
So does that mean, I'm sorry, that we could have a meeting the week of the 18th? Like that Tuesday, for example, or Monday? I don't.
Yeah,
That,
a
that
meeting or a
would be
decision.
acceptable. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And can I ask a tiny question, which might require you to pull up the on concept A, sorry.
Mhm.
There are 3 trees that are taken out in the first drawing, right near Quarry Street, including 2 oaks. Having just read a book on the ecological services that oaks provide, this is especially painful, but I didn't understand why those 3 trees right across from Quarry Street were being taken out. Could someone just give me a little?
I think most of the, or all of the tree removal that is shown on the plans at this point is based on a review by the arborist. He has gone through and assessed the health, the lifespan, condition, all of that.
I thought that something else was going in there, but I didn't understand what else was going in there. All right, great. Thank you for your patience.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go to Leighton, then Leticia, and then we'll go back to Michelle.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick, question. If we're going to rethink the whole plan, I'm just going to throw this out there, and I don't know if this would work for neighborhood people or for even business owners on Witherspoon. But if we could get everyone in agreement to take out parking on Witherspoon Street, would that not give us all the room that we needed to have a promenade, a bike path, to slow down the traffic, to make the Latinx population happy who moves by bicycle, and the children who move by bicycle to and from school? I think if we're going to look at new ideas and new approaches, we might want to consider taking parking off of Witherspoon. I don't, when you think about it, I don't think many people who reside on Witherspoon Street park on Witherspoon Street in that part of town. And I'm not sure, how many parking places there are, but they're not a whole lot. One concern would be Sunday mornings for the churches, but maybe we could, find 10 or 12 parking places that could accommodate Mount Pisgah AME Church and Shirley's Church, First Presbyterian Church on Witherspoon Street. And really make it a promenade and make it beautiful. We're trying to get less car centric. Maybe we should give it a try on Witherspoon Street.
And in Philly, they actually allow cars to park in the bike lanes by the churches on Sundays. It's not without its trouble, but it is an option, as you mentioned.
Yeah, a scenario like that most likely would require us to widen the roadway, because of you wouldn't be able to put in buffered bike lanes on the roadway unless we widen the roadway. And by taking away the parking now kind of adds some friction and some visual containment for a driver. And if that's not there and you have bike lanes along the side of the road, there's a tendency for vehicles to speed up.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, we can
I would
look at it.
I would just add another factor, obviously, for the parking on Witherspoon is that the businesses on Witherspoon, do need customer parking. So I guess they would have to try to find parking on the side streets in the neighborhood, because I don't know where else their customers would park.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was going to be my comment. One of my comments is that, I would definitely want to hear input from our business community there. Delicioso, there's 160, there's other businesses there that I know rely on the parking. And not only them, but I also would want to hear input from our Latino community. If we're concerned about making it safer for our community to get to and from work, I would like to hear from them what their preferences. But let me back up to what I originally was going to comment on, as someone who's not a confident, definitely not a confident bicyclist, whenever I travel to other communities, I do envy their wide roads and their long stretches of dedicated bike lanes that I always wish we had here. I just don't see how we could accommodate that, even with these with the concept, well, we're option A or option 2, how we could have what other communities have with long stretches. We're talking about a few blocks of, if we were go to concept B, a few blocks of possibly dedicated bike lanes, but it's not what we would have to give up in order to accommodate that. I think it seems like it would be a lot with the parking, and it's just something that I think because of that, I'm definitely more inclined to go with the staff recommendations, unless there's another alternative that hasn't been considered. But based on, I did get to review the documents before the meeting, and just based on what I read, based on your presentation today, I'm just more inclined to go with option A. Like I said, unless there's other alternatives that haven't been considered. But for me, just to give up the parking and other changes that we would need to make for just a few blocks, it just doesn't, it just doesn't seem that reasonable to me.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
Okay, well, I think that Eve kind of resolved my original comment, which is asking for some more time. I mean, we have two concepts I think we're really choosing between. My questions really pertain, and it's like very detailed in terms of the width of the street and the width of the bike lane and so on and so forth. So I think if we have a couple more weeks that we can dig into that. I'd like a little bit more research as far as how this works in more suburban settings and not just urban settings. So if we have a little bit more time and we can dig into that, and the staff will accommodate those that looking into it. It's just a big decision. It's a lot of money. I mean, how much is the whole project going to be, Deanna? Another 3.5, 5 to 5?
Oh, it's more than 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, phase one
And
alone,
that would-
we added hundreds of thousands of dollars of engineering design costs to phase one alone. So which brings me to a question, which is what money do we actually have available to pay for more design time? I guess, so whatever budget we have, I would imagine is pretty much set on the 2.5 months of design time to come up with the final design. So how much leeway, if any, do we have in our budget dollars to allow for more alternate design and details of an alternate design?
Nothing.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, so I think it sounds like it's pretty much council questions going to staff and staff coming up with the answers without really leaning on T&M much, because we don't have dollars there. But I think staff could probably answer most of the questions. That's my assumption.
Yeah, I would think so. And I think we have a good handle on it. I think there's just a little maybe, some things we could look at, seeing if we can compromise and move things around. Look, the idea of the bike lane, protected bike lane, just came up 2 weeks ago. It wasn't like this has been something that's been a concept it was really, the original plan was either you have parking or you have bike lanes, but you don't have both.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure whatever we do, we don't run into what we did on phase one to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, additional dollars that we didn't budget. So,
I think we have a couple of weeks to make a decision in which way we're going.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
There's only one hand up from the public, but I would like to get over there. So, Adam, could you bring Ben in?
Yes, Mayor.
And hey, Ben, just so because I didn't get the chance to say my spiel, everybody gets 3 minutes. If you could say your name and address so we get it right in the minutes, that would be appreciated, and welcome.
Thanks,
Mayor Freda. My name is Ben Roman. I'm actually didn't raise my hand about this topic, so I don't want to interrupt this conversation, but I do have another topic, which is the sidewalk along Princeton Kingston Road to talk about. So glad to wait a minute.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Thanks, Ben. All right, Adam, let's go. I think Yana was next.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, Yana.
Okay. I am very encouraged by the.
Yana, I'm sorry. Just so it's on.
I live at 19 Green Street.
Thank you.
Yana Moore. Okay. I'm really encouraged by the work that staff has contributed to a process that heretofore had been primarily engineering and dimensional approach and not all of the aspects of planning that Justin, as well as the arborist, brought in to give a fuller picture of what Witherspoon Street could be. I'm a little concerned that option B has had so many sort of obstacles identified for it, because I do think trying to establish a multimodal network and system of streets throughout the community is really important for the future, not just today. And of course, we don't even know all of the types of vehicles or bicycles that we may be driving or riding on in the future, but certainly that there are different needs by either the user or the vehicle type. So we're looking at sort of a time frame that, maybe is the next 30, 40 years. But I'd hate to jump right now and just say only option A is the way to go, because I was really encouraged by the inclusion of potential bike lane. There had been a discussion about possibly shifting the parking to the other side of the street, and that travel on Witherspoon Street, the most difficult in terms of the shallow part of bicycle mixed with cars, was really the northbound, because that was downhill. So I'd like to see, the other options that had been discussed. I don't know if they were tested and eliminated because they had even more problems, but, in terms of the number of curb cuts and driveways, crosswalks, and all of the things that happen, perhaps on the east side versus the west side of Witherspoon Street, and how that directionally, in terms of the bicycle travel lane, would affect, the supposed bike network, which would involve, of course, John Street and perhaps the counterflow. So that I think, is something that could be analyzed, because if all of the, yes, I just wanted to, the poles are on the other side of the street, then we'd have fewer, conflicts with other structures.
Yana, thank you. Thank you, Yana. Okay.
Yana,
Adam, let's go to
Can I just say I just going to say I like that idea. Yeah, and I
Okay.
got that's
All right.
good.
Well, I just want to try to get everybody in the public to get the chance to speak.
Okay, next we have Tinica.
Tinica, yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tina Catio, 79 Dempsey Avenue. Can I just say how excited I am to hear about the plans for all these extra crosswalks and also the raised crosswalks that will go across Witherspoon Street. I think that's going to contribute a lot to the safety. But I would like to lobby you hard to take the time to consider option B, I am a biker. I'm not a brave biker. My husband is even less brave than me. And every time we go down Witherspoon Street, we are scared. And the numbers also do not lie. Witherspoon Street is a hotspot for car crashes. It's currently a hotspot for bicycle crashes. It has many car on pedestrian crashes. And there's already plenty of conflicts on Witherspoon Street right now. There are bicycles riding on the sidewalks, which are narrow. There are cars threatening the bicycles. And we have a lot of neighbors who live in the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood who ride their bikes to the CBD for work. And honestly, to ask these neighbors to go over Jefferson or more, I find it disrespectful. It used to be that people tried to reroute us through the cemetery, which is even more disrespectful. And I'm kind of glad to hear that the cemetery people have now put a stop to that idea because it just wouldn't die. I am really not into being sent into the cemetery. But just imagine you live on Lee Avenue or Birch Avenue or Lee or John Street. You're on your way to town. Are you really, seriously, are you really going to bike to Jefferson, go around and then end up on Wigan Street, which is also dangerous? No, it's disrespectful. We cannot ask our neighbors to do that. We're trying to get a Vision Zero policy off the ground. We really need to prioritize the pedestrians and the bicycle riders, because guess what? Neither bicycles or pedestrians cause traffic deaths. Cars do. And so, if you're going to ask us to ride back on John Street, that's great. But then remember to put a real bike lane on Paul Robeson Place as well. Don't skip those details. So I'm hard in favor of option B. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that was everybody on this topic. All right, so it sounds like we have a plan. We're going to look to set up a meeting the week of April 18th, and that'll give council members time to interact with staff, to ask questions or whatever. Yeah,
Mark-
David has, let me just get to David and Michelle. I'll jump right back to you. David, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask a quick question about something I have not had a chance to ask about before, which is one of the recommendations from PBAC had been to have the raised crosswalks at the entrances to the public streets as well, at least the ones into the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood, which I think could be really nice in terms of making that neighborhood feel like a little bit more of an enclave, but also really nice for the pedestrians who are going up and down that side of Witherspoon. And I just want to ask why that idea was dismissed. Was it cost? Was it stormwater related? Or something else?
Jim, Justin, Michael,
I think I'll jump in and say it hasn't been fully rejected. But it does entail looking at design of each of those intersections in terms of, and you hit the nail on the head, Councilman Cohen, drainage. So we would have to look at that. But it was not, for this concept development, this was, what are we doing with the main corridor? What we do with the side streets is add-ons, basically.
Thanks.
Okay, Michelle.
Mark, I just was reminding, I thought that there were some letters that came in that needed to be read that were pertaining to the work session.
You are too good to me. Thank you. Yes, and we split them up, so I forget who's reading what.
I think I have the fourth one. I think.
Okay, who's
I
got the
believe
third?
I have the first one.
Okay,
And I have a letter from Nancy Hall from Walnut Lane, who wrote, at this time, I think it is way too early to permanently remove trees, walking and socializing space for dedicated bicycle lanes. As a dedicated bicyclist, I am continually shocked at the number of adults who thinks it is okay to ride on the sidewalks, and at times using pedestrian crosswalks as though they are pedestrians. Added to that are children riding bikes, motorized skateboards, and other conveniences. I don't know what the one-wheel thing is called. I don't either, by the way. On this, quite honestly, unless some plan is put into effect and enforced to keep the sidewalks safe, I would suggest wider, not narrower sidewalks. Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
I have
Leticia.
letter 2.
Thank you.
M. Brown wrote, I ride my bike frequently with my kids to locations on Witherspoon at which we recreate, for example, the library, or make purchases, e.g. eateries. My kids are somewhat scared to ride on streets that have sharrows and not dedicated bike lanes. I believe it is a goal of this redesign to make Witherspoon more friendly for all, and I appreciate that you have a dedicated bike lane on one side of the street in one of your concept plans. If you could find a way to make a dedicated bike lane in both directions, we would be very appreciative and would be very likely to utilize this safe way into and out of town on our bikes frequently. Thank you.
I have number 3 from Huck Fairman on Mount Lucas Road, who writes, several neighbors and I would all appreciate bike lanes along Witherspoon and elsewhere. Several of those neighbors and I bike frequently through the town, and thus for safety reasons and environmental reasons, including emissions, it would be a clear benefit to the town to install bike lanes.
I have number 4 from Jane Manners, 61 Wheatsheaf Lane Road. Dear Princeton Council, I can't make it to tomorrow's council meeting, but I would like you to know that I am strongly in favor of a bike lane along Witherspoon. I often bike along this corridor, often on the sidewalk, because it does not feel safe to bike on the streets. A bike lane would be a huge benefit, encouragement to others to bike rather than drive to town, a goal we're all working towards. Thanks.
The 5th letter is from Dr. Joseph Beckwith and also Hao Yang Lab, of Hao Yang Lab. Princeton University writes, Dear Sir, Madam, I live near Witherspoon and Wiggins, 90 Dempsey Avenue, and would like to strongly support the proposals to put bike lanes on these and indeed any streets in Princeton. As a resident and biker, it would make my life much easier.
Okay, Michelle, again, thanks for reminding us about those, and thank you to all 5 of you for reading those. Okay, so we got a plan and we can move on now. Okay, thanks for everybody involved in that discussion. Thank you, Justin. Thanks, Deanna. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Jim. All right, we have resolutions now. 21-124, resolution extending contract term for agreement with Princeton Senior Resource Center for provision of programming and services to senior citizens in the community in the amount of $159,008. Is there a remote? Thank you, Eve. Is there a second? Thank you, David. Okay. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 22-125, resolution approving a 1-year extension to the Sustainable Princeton Extraordinary and Unspecifiable Services Contract in the amount of $90,000. Is there a motion on that one? Thank you, Leighton. Is there a second? Thank you, Michelle. Any questions on that? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 22-126, resolution authorizing an extraordinary unspecifiable service contract with R&D Consulting for information technology support from January through December 2022, not to exceed $60,000. Is there a motion on that? Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second? Thank you, David. Questions on the motion? Eve?
I feel like we're approving, and I'm sorry if my idea of time is a little warped. It feels like we're approving a lot of special expenses for IT. And I'd love to see everything relating to IT kind of collected in a single document. It could be I'm recalling something as though we're
I
last
agree,
month that
Eve.
happened
Eve,
2
I
years
agree.
ago.
Yeah.
If we could maybe get that, that would be really helpful. And just a clear description, like there was a pretty good description of what this was for, but just a clear description of each of the, major expenses for IT services.
And just where we are in the timeline of how we were going to get to where we were from last year. I think IT came and made a presentation. There was the firewall, the server room, the remote work from home ease. There were a bunch of different things that we were trying to improve. If we could just see where we are in that timeline.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. On the page. 22-127, resolution authorizing the purchase of personal protective equipment to improve COVID-19 preparedness in Princeton's vulnerable population, not to exceed $29,980.86. Thank you, Leticia. Eve's got the second. Questions on the motion? Michelle?
I'm just going to make a comment that I verified that this is completely covered by the CDBG block grant. So that'd be
Another quick comment. Thank you, Jeff and others, for being so proactive on this and really, even though some feel that the pandemic is over, I'm so glad that these resources will be in the hands of those in the community who need them. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thanks.
that.
I mentioned the Maureen Fullway in the CDBG. She's done a lot of work with this. These supplies are going to be distributed through the Human Services Office for low and moderate income families in Princeton.
Thank you.
Joe. We also have a hand up from the public. Adam, could you bring Maria in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Maria Juega, Grover Avenue. I have a question. I had a chance to look through the invoice that was provided for this purchase. I have a question regarding the purchase of the 300 plus oximeters. And from what I read, oximeters are not recommended without medical supervision. I'm just wondering what the thinking is behind purchasing so many of these at this point, and should the money perhaps not be directed to purchasing more tests? And also, given the fact that the tests, I understand, have an expiration date, are we purchasing these in batches to avoid ending up with expired tests?
I can handle that if
you're
that would be
okay.
Great. Yeah. In terms of the test, we didn't want to order too many tests, like you mentioned, Maria, because we were afraid they were going to expire. The oximeters were actually recently approved by the CDC for home use. The ones we purchased specifically were for home use. Again, the testing that we were concerned about was we want to make sure we get it out in a timely fashion before it expired. We also didn't expect that the federal government was going to let the testing lapse, which it did for uninsured individuals. So we're trying to also account for that measure. At this point, we're trying to have home tests available for everybody, but we're also hoping to have community test sites available for individuals as well. But at this point, I can send you the oximeter information that we have regarding the CDC's approval for that for home use. The ones we purchased are relatively easy to use for individuals at home.
Thank you, Jeff. Sure. Okay. Any other questions on the motion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 22-128, resolution awarding contract to U.S. Athletic Fields, Inc. for mowing and trimming of grass areas in public parks in the amount of $99,781.20. Is there, Michelle, thank you. Is there a second? Leighton, thank you. Questions on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. 22-129, resolution authorizing the withdrawal of bid submitted by Sal Electric Co. Inc. and award of electrical contract to Magic Touch Construction Co. Inc. for electrical repairs, maintenance, and miscellaneous services at various locations within the municipality of Princeton in the amount not to exceed $105,048. Is there a motion on that? David, thank you. Is there a second? Michelle, thank you. Questions on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22-130, resolution authorizing the award of a contract to NDL Maintenance Services, LLC, for the Princeton Spring 2022 planting project in the not to exceed amount of $39,200. Is there a motion on that one? Michelle, thank you. Is there a second? Leighton, thank you. Questions on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22-131, resolution authorizing a payment of $168,000 to the Princeton Public Schools for 2021-2022 school year hazardous busing transportation cost. Is there a motion on that one? Thank you, Mia. Michelle's got the second. Questions on the motion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all. 21-132, resolution rejecting bid for community Wi-Fi project. I think we had an email from Maureen earlier explaining that we needed to reject that and rebid that. David's got the motion. Is there a second? Leighton's got the second. Any questions on that? Eve?
Not specifically on this, but on the accompanying memo, which I guess we don't need to discuss tonight, or do we? Because that raised a lot of issues that I think would require quite a bit of conversation. Maybe someone has more information. I thought it was just about that we could do it a different way and get rid of this 15% surcharge, but then reading the memo, it sounds very different than what I originally thought. So I'm a little.
Yeah, my understanding is that the block grant won't cover the full amount in subsequent years, and that there would be some municipal commitment, and that we should be, thinking of, needing to spend $70,000 to $100,000 a year to cover the deficit. That was my.
Right. So Maureen, we can bring Maureen over to actually answer the question.
Yeah, that was not my understanding until I read that memo tonight. My understanding was just that there was some 15% that we were paying that we didn't have to pay, and so we could lower the bid.
Right. Well, why don't I'm
yeah,
sorry.
and so what I let me specify my question a little bit more, and I'd love to hear from Maureen about this. Is can we? It seems like since this is a 5-year program, we can't just sort of go ahead and bid for 1 or 2 years. We have to commit now to a 5-year bid. So I think that deserves, some discussion.
Okay. Why don't we just, okay, Maureen's coming in now.
Maureen, we're waiting for you to
could unmute.
Yeah. I'm trying to get my, well, anyway, I can do it without you seeing me. Basically, when I wrote the memo, the advice I was getting from our consultant is that Wi-Fi, community Wi-Fi would be a public service and would be capped at 15% of our annual CDBG budget. I did some research and I kind of convinced him, this is not a public service. This is infrastructure. We're bringing the nuts and bolts of Wi-Fi to the buildings. We are not paying for monthly services for people. We are not going into people's apartments. And he agreed with me. And so he changed his position on that. But today he did ask some questions to HUD representatives, And there's another set of issues that came up, which includes whether CDBG money could pay for maintenance of systems, and whether or not we could do a 5-year contract, because there is another HUD rule that says you can't sort of assume you're going to keep getting this money. So that's what we're trying to work around right now. And we were hoping we would get a final word from HUD today, but we didn't. So that's what we're waiting for. We do think you should just go ahead. We can reject that bid and rebid it. We're also going to be doing additional research before we would put it out for another bid. So that's where we're at right now.
I'm so excited, as you know, Maureen, about the possibility of getting this done. I think I've checked with you several times over the last 18 months, and I just can't. It's just like one barrier after another.
It has been. It's been extremely,
and
we've been on a learning curve too. Both myself and Lisa Maddox has been doing the RFP. And we've learned as we've gone along. I think we've learned a lot, but these HUD rules are so convoluted and sometimes contradictory. I'm relying on Mark Leckington, our consultant, to kind of lead the way here. So I want to give him another chance to try and straighten out the issue about the 5-year contract and whether or not maintenance costs could be included. And at that point, if we can work that out, then we'll go back out for bid.
Just to clarify, there was absolutely no criticism, and I hope you didn't take it that way. It was not. It was just like you figure everything out, and then you try to move forward, and then no, there's another rule or whatever. So thank you for continuing to try for the people in the community that, you know, for whom this would be an incredible service. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Maureen while she's on? I don't want her to disappear and then there be another question. Okay, Maureen, thanks a lot for jumping on.
No problem.
Okay, all in favor of the motion that we reject the bid, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I want to jump back to Ben Roman, who's been hanging out there. He had his hand up for a long, long time in the meeting, and then when we get a chance to speak, it was on the wrong topic. So I'd just like to bring him back. And Adam, if we could bring Ben over and give Ben his 3 minutes on, I think he's going to ask us about Route 27, and Deanna can also, when Ben's done, I think, let everybody know where we are and talking to DOT about that. Ben, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for allowing me a few minutes. My name is Ben Roman. I live at 771 Princeton Kingston Road. I'm a Princeton resident of 7 years and father of 3 children in the Princeton Public Schools. First of all, sorry for not knowing the protocol earlier. I hadn't submitted a question and I raised my hand too early. I'm representing families living along the stretch of Princeton Kingston Road from Riverside Snowden to Prospect Extension and Poe, who support building a sidewalk and bike lane along the stretch. Plans for a sidewalk are already in motion at town and state level, but have several more steps until breaking ground. They're made more complex by the fact that this stretch is historic Kings Highway. I know many of you know this, but for those who don't. Last year in 2021, 40 families living along the stretch of Princeton Kingston Road and 67 Princeton families in total signed a petition in support of plans for sidewalk and bike lanes. The results were shared with many members of this call, the mayor, select council members, and municipal engineer. As far as I know, made it to the State Department of Transportation. As you know, this is a densely residential neighborhood, and a sidewalk and bike lane along the stretch were part of the town's master plan adopted by the planning board in November 2017. The stretch was identified as having the highest level of traffic stress of any street in Princeton in the bicycle mobility plan. Now, almost 5 years later, swift action is needed because current conditions continue to be unsafe for pedestrians and bicyclists. The speed limit is 45 miles an hour, the paved shoulder is narrow, and there are many delivery and gardening vehicles. There's a high volume of pedestrian and bike traffic throughout the weekend, especially on the weekend. There have been several high-speed accidents in recent and distant memory along the stretch, and a recent very high-profile, very high-speed fatal motor vehicle accident. Personally, when I watch my children leave my property, I go running myself along the narrow strip of pavement. With cars going by at 55 or 60 miles an hour, it's a harrowing prospect where I am aware that 1 second of distracted driving, what that might mean. So today I'm just showing up asking for any updates And I've spoken to some of the other 40 families along the stretch, and we're planning to try to show up at town council meetings to continue to push this very important safety issue forward. Thank you for your time.
Yep, thanks, Ben. Deanna?
Thank you, Mayor. I have already this morning reached out to the Department of Transportation. We have at least 6 different items that have gone unaddressed, and Roman's request regarding the shared use pathway on Route 27 is just one of those. We also have the request for the rapid flashing beacons on Route 206, ADA improvements for a blind resident, for 2 traffic signals on Route 27, and some response to a pedestrian crash that occurred at University Place and Route 27. So we are trying to get a meeting with the Department of Transportation to get more information as to what their response is for each of these items. And as soon as we have more information, we'll be back in touch with council and the residents.
Thanks, Deanna.
Mhm.
So, all right, Ben, so hopefully you heard that, and thanks for bringing it up. Okay, council members, the consent agenda would be next. Just want to make sure that there's nothing on the consent agenda that anybody needed to pull or bring attention to. Okay, if not, would someone move the consent agenda? Leighton, thanks. David's got the second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's that. David?
Can I just,
I'm
hold
sorry.
on. Did we had something about, we had the sustainable Princeton item? Did
We
we?
did that.
We did, okay, all right, just want to make sure.
I was surprised when you didn't jump on moving it.
I
We kind of we waited a beat and then.
I
Then we
was
moved on.
I was there in spirit.
Next time.
Okay,
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
There you go. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Good night to everyone. Thank you very much.
And we'll do this
Good
again
night.
tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, we will.
Action, you know.